All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of my East Coast Fitness Podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Lewis. And today I do have another very special guest with me, and as I do with every episode, I'm just going to let them introduce yourself. If you could introduce yourself to the viewers, and that would be wonderful.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Greatly appreciate it, man. My name is Brandon Emslie. I run my own coaching business called Emslie Fitness. I've been a competitive bodybuilder for competitive men's physique athlete for about, I think, 4 or 5 years now. I've done about five shows in total. Yeah, that's all I got for you right now.
I was wondering how to pronounce your last name. I was trying to
Yeah.
sound it out. And that's why that's why I always get people to introduce themselves, because I've had some pretty I wouldn't say your name is funny or whatever, but I'm always
Yeah.
hesitant with the pronunciation because I don't
Oh,
want
for
to.
sure.
So I was trying
Uh,
to study it out before the podcast, and I was like, is it Emslie or Emslie? I was just trying to figure it out in my head.
yeah, no worries. It's a tricky one. And I'm the
I
same way. I'm so bad at
like
pronouncing.
I got some pretty drawn out introduction as well, where it's people will just literally go into every single topic on the podcast,
Yeah.
and it's just oh, that was a fairly good introduction. I think that's going to conclude the podcast. You know what I mean? And then you get
Yeah.
oh, hi, my name is blah blah blah, and it's
Yeah.
just oh, sweet. But yeah, no, just kind of how I icebreaker. I like to always ask people because I feel like it's a good conversation starter to begin with. But I guess at what age did you start going to the gym? And I guess when did that transition more into something that you knew you wanted to do for a living? And was that more what was your reason for starting the gym, I guess?
So I guess when I was back in high school, we actually had MMA classes, so mixed martial arts, and I loved doing those classes, and we would actually go to the gym, I think once per week, during those classes and work out, do a little body weight circuit, and we did some benching, some squatting, and stuff like that. And I started to really like working with the weights. So I started working out after school with one of my buddies, Nick. And then from there, just kind of kept being consistent with it, kept going probably 3 to 4 times a week. And then I started seeing the results. So I started seeing, I was starting to gain a little bit of muscle mass. I was starting to like the way I was feeling. I was feeling a lot more mentally clear. So I just kind of got addicted to that sensation. And and then from there, I was actually originally wanting to go to school to be a civil engineer. So I didn't take any biology courses in high school or anything like that. It was all physics, math, all calculus based stuff. And it's really funny too. I went to university. I didn't actually get into engineering because my marks weren't quite high enough. So I ended
Yeah.
up getting into sciences. And then with sciences, I did it for 2 years, tried to upgrade to go into engineering. And then after 2 years of sciences, I was just like, there's no way I can keep doing this. I fucking hate this. So I just kind of switched over. I took about 6 months off university and just did some landscaping for a little bit. Just to make a little bit of money, just kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was doing landscaping, and at the same time, I was still trying to compete too. And it was just so draining too, doing that physical job. So I was like, man, I got to do something else. I love the gym. Maybe I should just go into kinesiology or something like that. So I ended up applying for kinesiology, but I didn't have all the prerequisites for it. So I had to do some upgrading. Went to the Okanagan College in Penticton, did some upgrading for 6 months, and then went into university for it. So that's kind of the background how I got into fitness, I guess. Um,
So in terms of your kinesiology degree, that's something I was also interested in too. I'm just kind of disappointed I didn't get the opportunity to do it. Not saying I would never do it. I did my training certificates. I'm currently studying the nutrition course, sports nutrition, through the ISSA. So I'm trying to level up my credentials right now as we speak. But in terms of your kinesiology degree, I noticed that so is that the only one that you have, or you also have the personal trainer, and then you also have, is it the precision one that you have?
yeah. So I have the kinesiology degree. Yeah, precision nutrition. I have CSEP. I'm a CSEP certified personal trainer, and then I got a couple other WGA, World Gym Athletics certifications, and the functional movement screening certification too. So got a bunch of different stuff like that. So
Yeah. So in terms of like your degree, did you kind of go into the idea of that maybe like you wanted to start a business, or was it something that like I think this is a good spot to start, is kind of like the business aspect of it. Did you feel like when you went into the kinesiology degree, did you have an idea of like, you know what, I can probably work at a gym, or I can probably be like a fitness manager, or did you have an idea of like right off the bat that like, you know what, I'm going to get this degree and I'm going to start like my own business and kind of get things going with that? Like where was your headspace at when you were kind of like finishing up your degree, let's say?
When I was finishing up my degree, I was more so just like thinking about more in-person training. I didn't really, I kind of had like with Patty, because I knew Patty a little bit while I was going to school, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. I was just kind of scared to put myself out there on social media to get out of my comfort zone. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll just do like in-person training, and so that's what I did. Like I worked as a personal trainer while I was going to school. Um, I think it was my second year university, or maybe going into third year human kinetics. I was working as a personal trainer at the same time, so it kind of carried over nicely. I was able to like practice what we were learning and stuff like that. But
Oh, that's really good. So you kind of got the hands-on stuff as well. So
100%.
with your coaching business, so when you graduated, like what did you find the hardest part? Did you have clients right away, or did you kind of have to go and bang on some doors and get some clients, or like how did that kind of transpire for you in terms of like, was it more of like a stage thing where people kind of like knew you competed and kind of like wanted to do the same, or did you kind of get some lifestyle clients? And then like where did it all start from the client perspective, other than just like the personal training, like the one-on-one stuff? Like where did that kind of start for you?
Yeah, so as I was working at, it was the downtown YMCA, I was working member services as well. So as we were signing up people for memberships, we'd just kind of talk to them, see what they're interested in, see if they need help. And then I would get most of my clients just from that initial interaction there. We also did like what was called the ITs, like individual training. It was just a free session to give them just a general program. And then from there, if they liked that, they could we'd offer them the personal training sessions as well. But I also worked as a coach at like F45 teaching classes there. I worked at World Gym with clients there teaching classes, and then the last place I was working at was as a kinesiologist at Innovative Fitness, and there was super nice because he got all the clients for me. I didn't have to worry about getting any clients. So
Yeah,
right when I got
that's
yeah. So right when I got hired on there, I was already working with, we had like care lists. So everybody would train each other's clients. Like it was only me and him when I first got hired on. And I think there was about 35 clients. So we would kind of just split it up. And I was just working full time, just doing the training as a kinesiologist. It was really good, but financially it is still kind of a struggle. Like since I didn't have to work to get those clients, you don't get paid quite as much as you would with other places where you just find your own clients, essentially. Yeah.
So I guess like looking back now, do you feel like someone that's aspiring to kind of go into personal training and get into like maybe online fitness coaching, and they kind of want to follow in your footsteps, do you feel like it's a benefit to do a kinesiology degree, or do you feel like it would be enough to kind of pair a certification? Like do you think that what you learned in the kinesiology degree kind of like enhances somewhat of what you do, or do you think it's, I wouldn't say just good enough, but do you think like if somebody wanted to, I'll just take like ISSA courses and take my personal training and take maybe take precision? Like what are your thoughts on that?
Um, it definitely helps, like especially from an anatomy standpoint or biomechanics, and it covers so much content. A lot of it's for specifically like just coaching somebody for bodybuilding prep. It's not very useful from that standpoint, but from like just like a functional movement standpoint, just on learning what muscle group does what action. Like obviously you still learn those in those other kind of personal training certificates. It just kind of goes more in depth. I've done other courses there for like tissue injury and repair and stuff like that. So I would say it's very helpful. Some of it's not as useful for like the online coaching. Um, I do find for a lot of online coaches, they don't do like a proper screening of their client. They don't. I actually do like a movement screening with my clients. Get them to send videos of them doing certain simple patterns like squat patterns, hinging patterns, see their ankle mobility, their shoulder mobility, just to make sure that they can perform these movements that I'm giving them. Because I find a lot of online coaches out there, if they don't have experience working with somebody one-on-one, a lot of times they'll give exercises to somebody where they can't even actually do them. Like they don't understand like the person's fitness level for what they can actually do at that fitness level. If you get what I mean.
I think like I totally agree. I think that's also like very like good for a coach as well, because it like I know it personally like opens you up to say, you know what, like maybe my shoulder mobility wasn't what I thought it was. And I think for a coach, someone who's going to be coaching them, it gives you another opportunity to, you know what I mean, work on something other than like, let's say like progressive overload. Let's go in week to week and let's try to like get better at like overhead press. And it's like it gives you another goal to be able to accomplish. Like let's try to like let's spend more time doing the warm up so we're able to kind of get that mobility. We're able to kind of like get that rotation. So I think that like that's a kind of a good thing for sure. And like I think that like having your clients do that for sure is beneficial for not only you but also for them as well. And I think the ultimate goal of any type of training is obviously to avoid injury, right? Like you don't want the last thing you want to do is to like get your client injured. That would kind of be the worst. I mean, luckily I've never had any type of issues with like people getting injured, but I feel like it would be a pretty shitty, you know,
exactly,
because you didn't do like a proper assessment.
Yeah.
So in terms of your clientele, like I guess right now, who is like your ideal client? If like a dream client were to come like knock on your door tomorrow, like if I was a dream client and I was like, hey, fill in the blank, like what am I looking for? I guess what would you say is like somebody who you'd be like head over heels to work with, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. So I love working with like physique or even like bodybuilding athletes or just somebody that wants to change their body composition a lot. Like those kind of clients are just like the most fun to work with. And the ones that are obviously willing to put in that effort that will do exactly everything you say, which isn't most people. A lot of times it's a lot of people that I find I'm working with do struggle with just adhering to certain things. So just providing them with that support and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely I like helping competition clients, especially like men's physique clients. Like my last two clients that did physique, or I guess my first two clients that did physique, they both got their pro cards in men's physique.
Awesome.
So it's just I feel like I have a lot of knowledge around competing, the diet aspect of it, and the training, and just for maximum like muscle retention and that muscle hypertrophy kind of training. Like that's the stuff I love. I do love working with. I found at Innovative Fitness, I was working with a lot of like rehab clients. It's still super awesome to see them go from coming in there to barely being able to move well, and then come like after like 2 or 3 months being able to like run, or being able like if they lost like 20 pounds or something, just feeling better, their mood's feeling better, there's happier, like that kind of stuff I love too. But definitely the competition side of things is where I try to taper towards a little bit more.
So have you ever like considered like one thing that interests me was like working with athletes, like not just competitors, but like also like people involved with baseball, hockey. Like I wonder if do you feel like there'd be an opportunity for you to maybe work with like a university, if there was like a basketball team? Obviously you might have to get like different, not necessarily different qualifications, but you'd have to like that program would be much different than like a bodybuilding program, right? But like, do you feel like that's something that would interest you to kind of say, you know what, maybe I could expand my business and I could help athletes prepare for their upcoming basketball season, and maybe in the future, like work with like pros to like help people kind of like, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Jeff Cavalier guy from Athlete Next, whatever, but I think he was like the strength and conditioning coach for, I think was it the Mets or something like that, the baseball team. I think he worked.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he did. He was the strength and conditioning coach for the Mets. Because I've seen pictures of him going out to the dugout to talk to the pitchers and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah, would that be something like you would kind of like? Would that be of an interest to you? Do you think, or would you kind of like want to stick more towards like the competitors, like the bodybuilders?
For me, I would probably personally stick more towards like the competitors, like the bodybuilders or men's physique athletes. I do want to even like powerlifters would be another interest of mine. Like I've read a lot of books about powerlifting and like the different periodization for them. So I actually personally want to do a powerlifting meet in the next like 2 or 3 years. So I feel like that would be another kind of athlete that I would love to work with.
Absolutely. So just a couple more on the business side of things, and then we'll kind of move on. So in terms of like you starting your business, like I guess how long did it take you to go from doing it? I guess I don't know. Was it a part-time thing or was it a full-time thing? I guess like how long did it take you to transition from the spot where you were, kind of struggling to where you were had enough clients in order to kind of keep business going? Like what was that journey like? I guess, or kind of like how long was it?
Yeah, so I guess I started to online coaching probably back in like 2019 after my last competition. Like I just started I did a couple like promotions or something through Instagram, but I didn't really know how to market myself. I didn't really know what kind of content I should be putting out there for more people to see, and I wasn't that consistent on social media. So I think I worked with like 15 people within like from I guess 2019 to like 2020. Kind of just worked about with 15 people online. So just slowly started getting a
So
couple more and more.
how did you establish that like base 15 clients? Like where did you find, like did you know them from, like were they friends, or were they friends of friends, or were they people that just kind of like reached out to you, or did you kind of have to do a lot of legwork to kind of get like, you know what I mean, 5, 10, like 15, like
Yeah, so with the clientele, most of them were actually just people I went to high school with. Like a lot of them were just people that I knew back in the day that just wanted to get a little bit healthier. It wasn't actually until do you know B Mark Fit from Instagram? He's a mentor for online fitness coaches.
maybe I
Okay.
can't, not off the top of my head, no, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
So I joined his 10K coaching academy, and that's where everything kind of blew up for me, where I started posting more frequent on social media, like posting like 3-4 times a week, constantly on my story, just because I find getting clientele, it's all about social media presence. So if you're not
Yeah,
posting on social media, you don't really exist on the platform. So just
especially
constantly.
being online, right? Because it's completely different from being in person, where people like go to the gym and like your clientele is the people at the gym. Whereas like that's the benefit of being online, is the fact that like you don't know who you're reaching. You know what I mean? You could be reaching like one day you could post, you could reach 10 clients, and then you could post for like 5-6 days and not reach one person. So I think that overall, like that makes sense. Like consistency over time. Like it's not going to be one post. It's not going to be two
No.
posts. It's not going to be three posts. It could be just one random post where you catch somebody, you know what I mean, who's feeling a little bit down or feeling a little bit lost or feeling a little bit demotivated, and next thing you know, they reach out to you, and then you know what I mean, you change their fitness goals, and then people see that and they start to recognize that like not only does this guy got the credentials, he's got the experience, but he's also like looks good himself as well, which I feel like is important. But like he's helped people in the past, and I find that like getting those transformation stories is it's like the art project, right? Like it's if you say that you're a painter but you don't got any paintings, it's like, are you really a painter? Where it's like if you're a coach and you don't got any transformations, like did you really do anything? I guess is kind of like the thing. So I think that like accumulating those transformations and like getting those positive relationships from the start and helping people like feel comfortable and like being able to post about it, I think really reinforces it to like other people, that like you're confident in helping people, and the people that you helped seeing some results. Because at the end of the day, people, if they're paying for something, it's like it's different if it's like a friend to friend thing where it's like, hey man, like I can help you get in shape, like eat that, eat this. If it doesn't work out, whatever. But like when you're paying somebody to do it, who you feel has got the credentials, it's like you want to get your best bang for your buck, obviously, right? So I think that that's a totally different thing for sure.
100%, man.
So yeah, so I guess like for you, sorry to cut you off. I just kind of I just
No
kind of
worries,
want to
man.
elaborate on it because I feel like it's a pretty valid point. It's pretty important. So yeah, did you find that like that coaching academy, like that was more about like posting regularly? So like was that something that like you initially noticed like the results from, or was it something that like you kind of got like fed up with and kind of had to like reevaluate what you were doing? Like kind of how did that go? The posting consistently going from like not posting to posting consistently.
Yeah. So I was always kind of scared to post a lot of my stuff because I found like my grammar is not great. My speaking skills aren't like on point. So for me, it was just kind of getting out of my comfort zone and just posting stuff, even if I didn't think it was top notch, post it anyway because it's going to help at least to help one person out, and just I found too, just posting things that you can connect with other people, like showing that you're vulnerable, that you make mistakes yourself, that you're not perfect, right? That's gonna build that trust in people. Because if you're constantly posting things about you always being perfect, and people are
Yeah.
like, "Well, man, I'm not perfect. Like, I can't relate to that, right?" So, being able to connect with those people, and then just giving value to, like, I try with all my posts to at least have something that somebody can take action towards, like to help motivate them to keep going, or help stop them from doing like some sort of fad diet or something like that, right? So
Yeah, because then they want to share that with people. They're like, hey, like Brandon gave me a pretty awesome tip. You know what I mean? Like, if he's giving me free tips, like I can only imagine like what's going to happen when I start paying them. You know what I mean? So to have that like free content out there, I feel like that's where a lot of people, they get fed up with it and they give up with it like way too early, because they're sick of putting free content out there. And I'm not saying like they're sick of it, but it's just kind of like after a while, it kind of like it gets frustrating, because like you're giving everything, you're giving it all, and then people like might be reading it, they might not. And I know how long it, like I know some of your posts, I've seen them, right? Like
yeah.
I understand like how long it actually takes to, like, even when you know what you're talking about, like how it, like the grammar wise, to be able to like format it, to be able to like make it like, to not dumb it down, but to be able to make it concise for people to understand. I understand how long that takes.
Yeah.
Like
And yeah,
when you don't got any, like when you're like, oh well, nobody really read it, it's just like that's where people like stop. And I feel like that's the number one mistake that people make, is they stop. Because I know, like, to relate this to YouTube, when I first started putting YouTube videos out, I'm nowhere near where I want to be on YouTube right now. Like I'm still only getting maybe like 50 views a video, let's say. I've got like 700 subscribers. But for me, it was like when I first started, it was like progression, and like I had nobody watch a video. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how many people can relate to that, but like putting out a video and editing everything and putting like your all into a video and then having like no views, it's like, all right.
yeah, yeah,
So
and
yeah,
it happens too, and that's where it's just that consistency. Because over time, no matter what, like it's more people are gonna see it, so more people are gonna reach out. Like I find too many people give up too soon, right? Like there'll be, for
absolutely.
myself, like even when I started posting right away, like I did get a little bit more clients, but it wasn't until like I really started just sticking with it. A couple weeks I was on and off with, and I really noticed right off the bat when I was inconsistent. I got less clients, I got less people reaching out to me. But once I started being consistent again, more people are reaching out or commenting or engaging on everything. So it's that consistency. Even if like something might not be perfect, it's going to be better to put that out than just put nothing out at all.
Absolutely. So that's going to lead into the last point of the business side, then we'll move on. So one
Yeah.
last question I want to ask you is, for somebody that's starting, that wants to start their own online fitness coaching business, or just wants to kind of get into the fitness level, like teaching fitness or doing kind of like following in your footsteps. I guess like what would be your best piece of advice? I guess that kind of tails off to kind of what you mentioned, but what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody who is looking to kind of get interested in, let's say they have no certifications, they've been lifting for like enough time to be able to be confident with it, but they're like shy to take that next step to kind of put themselves out there.
So I would just say start creating content. Don't care too much if it's not perfect or not. Just kind of show your face on social media. Show who you are as a person. Make sure you, yeah, make like a connection post, like so people can relate to you. Make some sort of value post so people can draw information from it. Over time, as you work with more clients, do some sort of testimonial videos or transformation posts and stuff like that. And I would suggest getting certified, or at least do a lot of research. Make sure you know your knowledge, because I know there are a lot of people that aren't certified that have tons of knowledge, that are really great coaches. But there's also a lot of people that they compete, say, in one show, and they don't really look up much stuff or read that many books, and they're just thinking, oh, what works for me is going to work for everybody else, when that's not
Yeah.
the case. So definitely making sure you have that knowledge as well.
Yeah, I think that that's the foundation with anything. It's like no matter what you want to do, you have to feel, if you don't feel confident in doing it, like if you don't got, I know personally for me, it's like once I took a course on it, like it was just, it opened my eyes to like how much more confident I was in order to do what I want to do. And I think that like it opens you up as well, and it makes you like apprehensive about like other people's needs. And like I remember when I first worked with my first female client, it was like it was much different than working with a male, you know what I mean? So there was an
100%.
adjustment for me, that I was trying to be as open as I could about it to the person, that like, you know what, this is a learning process for me. But like we'll get there kind of thing. So I was given some positive reinforcement, but I was also like, I think the biggest thing is to be open with the person. I feel like that's my biggest piece of advice is like once you start getting some clients, you can easily like lose those clients if you aren't open. So like if you say that like, oh yeah, like I specialize in sports nutrition, it's like, well, like what areas are you confident in and what areas are you like, I wouldn't feel confident taking somebody through like a full prep, right? So if somebody wanted to do a show, I would tell them straight up. I wouldn't mislead them to the point where it was like, all right, let's start your show prep. And then like 2 weeks into the show prep, I'm like, where do I go now? Like, I have no idea. So for me, that's something that I need to get a little bit more experience in myself. But in terms of transformations and weight loss and being able to help people build muscle, being able to like help people live healthier lifestyles, to be able to like get people introduced to it, like I feel like that would be my niche. So for me, it was like making sure I had that connection, that I was able to like not mislead people and tell them straight up, like, you know what, I can't help you with that. But I know somebody who can. And I think that like at the end of the day, that's going to go a lot further than claiming that you're the one size fits all coach that can take you from this and that, and that guarantees that you know what I mean? Like, I think at the end of the day, like broken promises are worse than just being honest with the person.
Exactly.
So,
And like, yeah, when you don't know something, just be straight up and be like, sorry, I don't know this. I'll have to dig into some research and maybe communicate with another coach that has more background around that certain topic, or maybe even say like, here, like, I don't know what to do in this situation, but I recommend that you would go over to this coach because they know more information than I do, like you're saying. So I think that would be great. Yeah.
and I think that also, like, just to kind of like wrap up this topic, but I think that would kind of like help your morale too, like with like as you network with more and more coaches. If you give coaches referrals, like if I gave a client to you, you know what I mean? I was like, you know what, give Brandon a call. He knows what he's talking about with this. He'd be much better off. Then I'd say like, well, tell him I sent you, and then you'd be like, oh, Mark sent him. I did a podcast with him. Like that's nice of him. You know what I mean? The next time that you like, maybe you've reached capacity and you've got like way more clients than you need, and there's a lifestyle client that like, you know what I mean, that doesn't really fit your bill, then maybe you'd be like, hey, like go over to Mark. So I think that like having that community and building, like, I think a lot of online fitness coaches, they're like, I can't really say that because I'm kind of like summing everybody up to a category, but I feel like everybody like wants things for themselves and they think that they're the best coach. But I think that like at the end of the day, if people are more accepting of like being a community and like having that community coaching experience where it's like, this is my network of coaches, these are the people that I work with, these are the people that I trust. Then at the end of the day, I think that like having that rapport with them, I think at the end of the day, we'll be better off than trying to like fight with everybody for clients.
100%, man. I totally agree.
So yeah, now I kind of want to move into the competing side of things. So I guess like when was your first time that you did a show?
So the first time I competed, that was back in 2014. That was at, I think it was called the Western Canadians. I think it was back at I think it was in the BCABBA organization. I actually came third in my first show, so I was pretty pumped on that. I ended up prepping myself. Do you know Lane Norton?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember just searching up a bunch of videos of his and just kind of followed the same kind of protocol for the majority of it, and ended up wasn't as lean as I should have been, but lean enough to place third in my first amateur show. So I was pretty stoked.
So that was it. That was a natural, like, was that a complete natural show where it was tested and everything, or was it an unnatural?
It was a natural show for the BCABBA. I'm not the biggest fan of that organization because I made it to nationals in that show. I won one of the classes. I came second in one of the classes. I came second in nationals, and I didn't get tested once throughout that whole thing. And I only seen one person get tested. So there was kind of a little bit of a weird vibe going on when I was in that organization. So that's why I'm actually switching over to the WNBF, just because they do the polygraph test and the urinalysis test. So I feel like it's going to deter more people that are using to stop them from going to those shows.
And I think that don't they only test the people that place or something too? So it's kind of like, so that's good. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about the WN or that federation. But yeah, like that'd be where I would be heading next. I did the CPA, and I just did it because I wanted to get my feet wet in a show. And for me, it was like a last minute decision where it was like I'm very impulsive, and I'm like, when I decide on something, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I was like 240 pounds. So it was almost like a weight loss journey for me. It was like, like it was more of like like a weight loss journey to like a show transition. Like it wasn't a real, so that's why I'm kind of excited to kind of like see, you know what I mean, keep my weight to where like do like a nice lean bulk and like keep my weight manageable. So like I don't have to drop. Like I lost close to like 60 pounds or something. Like it was a lot of weight. I hopped on stage at 166 pounds.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
How
and
long?
like it was through 3 months, or I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
So I started prep in like December, kind of like I was waiting for my plan in December.
Yeah.
And then I stepped on stage in April.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
How much weight were you losing per week? Like must have been a pretty fast rate if you lost 60 pounds in 3 months.
like I was 200. Like I think I was 200 and at my heaviest I was 235 pounds. So that would have been like summer. So like I dropped that down myself because that was just me making better choices. So I think like I actually started my prep around like 220 or something.
Yeah.
So like I was around 220. So it was like it still was a significant amount of weight drop. And like also, but yeah, like for me it was just like it was a lot of like low carb meals. It was a lot of cardio. I lost a shit ton of muscle. I like you would if you were a natural anyways, but I was very surprised with like how much muscle I didn't have. And I think that's like safe to say as well for like people that are natural to begin with. Like once you like start shredding, you're like, wow, like I thought my arms were bigger, or I thought my abs would come in different, or like whatever it was, right? Like for me, it was like, wow, like I don't think I'm ready to even like compete, because like for me, it was like I need a good 2 years of, you know what I mean, steady progress. So for me, it was kind of shocking, but I think that like that could have been resolved with just more of a gradual weight loss. I think I would have been just conditioning wise. And that wasn't the coach's fault at all. Like that was just me not giving it enough time to be persistent on that show. But yeah, to kind of go back to what I was saying, like it kind of ramped up to about 2 hours of cardio a day, like towards the end there, or like I don't remember exactly what it started, but I remember doing two sessions of cardio and a weight training session. So I'd do like an hour in the morning. I'd go to work, and then after work I'd go to the gym, work out for like an hour, and then do more cardio. So so pre-workout was like my best friend. I was literally eating, like, I remember eating like green beans with every meal.
How many calories were you at for like your lowest?
I was basically on a bikini diet. Yeah, I think honestly I think I was 1,200.
1,200, yeah.
I think I could be mistaken, but I think it was 1,200. It was literally nothing. Like it was just green bean. I remember putting mustard on everything.
I do the same way, yeah.
Mustard and hot sauce. I don't know. You probably heard of Regan Grimes.
That sounds familiar. Is he a competitor?
Yeah, he's an IFBB bodybuilder.
Oh, okay. I think I know who you're talking about.
He's from London. He's from Ontario. Anyways, he does this thing called the Grimy Bowl. And basically what it is just a bunch of like spinach and vegetables and chicken, and it's like him like crushing the prep, right? Like, and he basically just loads it up with like hot sauce and mustard, and he just eats like a mustard hot sauce salad. And at that time I was watching his videos, and every meal I just remember like I brought mustard to work with me. Like people thought I was like weird, like why you bring a mustard? And I was like, if I don't have this mustard, I'm gonna go and like binge on that peanut butter. And then I'm like cheat. I'm like, I think I probably cheated, like honestly, I probably cheated 3 or 4 times. And that obviously was my first show, so like lesson learned. But yeah, like just kind of to reiterate, like it was a grind, and like I wanted to get my feet wet and figure out whether or not it was for me. And at the end of the day, I determined like I love it. And it made me it gave me a reason to train. So for me, competing is more than just, you know what I mean? Like I'm competitive to begin with, and I feel like it's my way of playing competitive sports. And something I always grew up on was like hockey and golf and trying to be competitive in some nature. So for me, bodybuilding gives me more than just, it gives me a reason to kind of like better myself and like to not do it for health, because for me, doing it for health kind of gets boring after a while. Like it's like, all right, I can be healthy, I can eat my vegetables, I can maintain my weight, but at the end of the day, what's that going to achieve me? It's just going to achieve me like longevity and like potentially like living healthy and living fit. But for me, like competing gave me that like edge that I needed to be like, all right, well, I need to bring up my rear delts. It gave me something to work on. I need to bring up my abs. I need to bring up this. I need to like And then I found like being able, and that's what inspired me to do coaching myself, was like, I loved the process of how the experiences that I went through. And I was like, if I could do that for somebody else and bring somebody to like realize like, not like, I guess like they could be better, I guess is the vision. And then like, I thought like when I was like that, I thought I looked pretty good, you know what I mean? But now comparing it to other people, I'm like, I could look better. So I think that like having that like continued mindset of like constantly improving and kind of like trying to drill that into other people to realize that like it could always be better is something to always push towards. And like it makes the gym more than just a gym, right?
100%, yeah.
So
And I find too, it's another thing for me. Like one of the main reasons I like to compete is, yeah, kind of similar to you in the sense where it's like a goal to work towards. Because I found if I didn't have competing, I don't know if I would still be in the gym as much as I am today. Like I feel like I would have got bored and maybe started playing like different sports. But like for me, it's just about getting out of my comfort zone, doing something that it kind of scares the shit out of me because I love. I don't know. I feel like to grow as a person, you have to do things that scare you. And for me, competing definitely scares me because I don't like people always having their eyes on me. Like I don't like being
yeah,
center of attention. So like for me, it kind of got me out of my comfort zone. It had made a goal for me to shoot towards, and I don't know. And that's why another thing is I want to compete in bodybuilding too to get to that level of conditioning now because men's physique. You still have to get super conditioned, but I find bodybuilding is just that another extreme, like trying to get to like those shredded glutes. It's for me, it's like it's scary thinking about.
You don't win the show if you don't got the glutes.
Yeah.
It's like I've heard from people. It's like as soon as you got the glutes in, like you have a good opportunity to win the show.
Yeah.
Because if somebody doesn't come in there with like their glutes shredded,
Yeah.
then they didn't suffer enough, right? So
100%, man. So I don't know. There's like that love-hate relationship. I find too when I'm competing, like my life is so structured, and I love when my life is structured. I feel like I'm way more productive.
yeah,
So I don't know. It gives me like that edge almost for being more productive. Like even with my work and obviously with competing, it helps with getting more clientele. Like just showing my journey to competition is gonna just motivate others to kind of lose their weight and stuff like that. So
yeah. Like for me, it was the exact same thing. Like it gives me like a reason to kind of go to the gym. And I definitely would go to the gym, but I definitely wouldn't take it as serious. Like I wouldn't be. I don't think I would be where I want it. Like I wouldn't say I wouldn't have goals, but I think that like going to the gym and like competing are two different things. Like, yeah, you can set goals, but I think that like if you're competing, like it really forces you to set goals because unless you're just like blessed with like good genetics and whatever you do, you just magically like appear muscle just because you've got like bomb genetics. Like I feel like even those people like they won't win a show unless they're fully committed. But at the end of the day, I think like for me, it was like more of just like a competition. Like that's kind of why I love it. It's just because it drives me to be better. It gives me something to like focus on. And I think that I don't know what I love more, like documenting it or actually competing. Cause I feel like it's a weird trade-off for me. Cause obviously competing is fun and like going on stage, but I find that like when I actually documented my show on YouTube. So like I did like a whole document. Yeah. So I've got it on my YouTube channel. If you're bored one time and you want to check it out. And then you can see what I'm eating. I literally documented from like day 89. It was like 89 days out, 88 days out, 87 days. And it was like my training, some days of eating and posing and blah, 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 and all that kind of weird stuff. But I basically documented it. And like that was for me, it was like being my first show, it was like hard to balance it. But like I really love documenting it and I also love competing. So like when you combine both those two things, it's just like for me, it's like absolutely perfect because like and it gives me something to look back on too. So I think that like those are things that like now when I do my next show, I'm able to look back on like I'm able to rewatch those episodes and see like okay, like hopefully I'll look better at like a certain amount of days out or like whatever it is. But yeah, that's kind of why and that's kind of what made me fall in love with YouTube as well. It's just like constantly consistent because I was putting out like I remember I was grinding YouTube videos daily. Like I was putting out,
man, that's a lot of work.
but I hardly edited them, right? Like I would go to the gym and I would film on my phone and whatever it is it is what it is. And then I would literally just like chop them to like the exercise or as close to the exercise as I could. and I wouldn't even put any like transitions or nothing. I would literally just put them in like, I was using Filmora. I still use Filmora, which is like a software to edit videos. But I was literally just using Filmora. I would just drag the clip in. I would rush. So to kind of give you a perspective of how crazy I was, I would come home from work and I would have to go I would have like 1 hour like before I like had to go to bed because I had to be up the next day and I had to like do my cardio. I had to do like everything I needed to do. I would go in and I would have that 1 hour of literally just trying to upload that video as quick as I could. And I would put the thing in there. I'd export the video. I'd upload it to YouTube, and that was like my daily grind of like training, cardio, competing, and putting on YouTube videos. And then after, I was like, that's not sustainable. There's no, unless I have somebody to like who's going to do it for me. So then I was like, I fell in love with actually like doing them better and like trying to put out less videos but improve the quality of the videos. And then that just fueled my passion for like the creative side, because I've always been very creative, right? Like, so for me, it was like, there's nothing that could be better for me, like bodybuilding, competing, and YouTube, like content. So I basically just found a way to be able to try to like mix them up into the best like way that I could.
Nice, man. That's awesome though. And like that's the thing with bodybuilding, it's kind of creative as well, like trying to balance out your physique, like have those nice cap delts and have that nice X frame. So yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I just kind of stemmed from there, and ever since I just fell in love with it. I've been doing it. I've been doing YouTube consistently now since I put out those videos. I took a little break, but I mean, everybody has a little bit of a burnout. But yeah, it's definitely like a learning process for sure. So going back to the shows, like so how many shows have you done, just so I can have an idea?
So yeah, I've done 5 shows so far. So I did, the Westerns. I did an untested show, like the BC provincials. I think I came like 8th or 9th in that show out of like 18 people. And then I waited 2 years, had a little off season, went back, did the Kelowna show again, came first in my class. I think there was about 24 people in that class. So I was pretty amped up to win that one. And then I almost got the overall. I think I came like 3rd in the overall. Then I went to the BC Cup that same year, placed 2nd. And then I had to wait till the next year to go to nationals. And then for nationals, it was kind of weird. They split up the classes into a bunch of different height classes when there wasn't even that many people. So there's only actually 2 people in my class, and I came 2nd. So I was like, it feels like I came last, but I came 2nd. So, but when I looked at the scorecard, I think I came 9th or 10th out of like the 25 competitors. So I still did not too bad for nationals. So I was pretty proud of myself there.
So with coaching, like how many of those shows did you have a coach for?
I had like so the first show I didn't have a coach for. A second show, I kind of partially had a coach for. He kind of helped me out in the beginning, but I couldn't afford to keep paying him, so we kind of cut it off, and I just prepped myself for that one. My second show was probably my worst show I ever did, because I started a lot of the guys, because it was an untested show, a lot of guys were like cutting their water, like cutting their sodium and shit like that. And then I ended up doing the same thing, because I was like, oh, well, all these guys are doing this and they look good. So I ended up doing that. Didn't get a pump at all backstage. I was getting cramps, felt like garbage. My neck was like super tight. And then I was like, yeah, maybe Lane Norton was right when you shouldn't cut water. And yeah, so that's what happened my second show. All my other shows, the Kelowna show that I came first, and I prepped myself for that one. But I followed Lane Norton's kind of guidelines, and like I read all the. Do you know Eric Helms?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, his muscle and strength pyramid books. I read like Lane Norton's competition prep guide book, and that kind of set me up for success for that show, where I came first in the Kelowna show. I still didn't quite get conditioned enough, and my posing still wasn't quite on point. But it was like I have fairly good genetics, so that I think my genetics kind of helped me with that show. And then for the next, I think I had the BC Cup 2 weeks after that, and that's where I met up with Patrick, and he's like, "Oh man, like, do you need some help with your peak week?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, man." Like, and then he really helped me dial it in for that week, and like, so that BC Cup was where Patty helped me out, and I came 2nd in that show. And then my last show that I did, the Nationals in Montreal, ended up prepping myself for that one as well. I was gonna hire Patty, but I was just financially just not at a good point at that time. Like I was going to school full time, I was working part time, and like it was a crazy experience. Like that was probably my yeah, it was like my hardest prep, I would say. But the main thing for that show was just the posing wasn't there, and I still wasn't quite conditioned enough. I find not having a coach for me, I just don't end up pushing myself to that extreme to get to those levels of conditioning. So that's where and just having somebody like a second eye is just so perfect for those kind of things, because you get all into your head, right? Like especially the last couple of weeks, like trying to peak, you're like, am I full, am I flat, am I spilled over, and you just get stressed out, and the stress causes you to hold water retention, and yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing it without a coach, to be honest with you. Like, as much as like, even if I knew it, like I wouldn't say like even if I knew it all, like it's still, to me, it's like you're looking at the same thing over and over, and like even the posing, like it's for me that was something that that's the reason why I hired a coach, because I thought like the posing, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I realized like I didn't know any like I didn't know anything, so I'm like I'm glad that I did or whatever. But I guess like, so for you, I guess, where are you trying to, like, what are your goals for competing? Are you trying to win your pro card? Is that what you're trying to do with the men's physique?
Yeah, so for men's physique, that's my goal for the Vancouver show, is to try to get that pro card there. If not, I might do men's physique in the Kelowna show. But my whole goal is to do men's physique there, try to get my pro card, and then go to the Kelowna show about a month later and try the bodybuilding class and see if I can get to that level of conditioning. Like I want to at least do the bodybuilding class once in my life and get to that extreme level of conditioning.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like my legs, they're probably not quite proportionate to my upper body. I still find I need to work on them a little bit more, but we'll see once I bring the conditioning if they pop a little bit more. But yeah.
So in terms of like your men's physique, I guess, what do you, based on like feedback or based on your own thoughts, like what do you feel like has been or is holding you back from getting that pro card? Like what do you think? Like, is it like a weak body part? Is it like the posing? Is it like, what do you feel is the biggest thing, I guess, that you maybe try to improve on this time, or you've been trying to like constantly better?
Yeah. So for body part wise, I would say like my upper chest, like my lateral delts, like even my arms. Like my arms used to be a really strong point, but then I started tapering my volume towards like my shoulders and like my chest and my back, and then I kind of slowly stopped doing enough volume for my arms. So I found my arms might have actually shrunken a little bit. So there, I would say for the most part, it's my upper chest, my lateral delts, and probably arms that need the most improvement.
Yeah. So what kind of adjustments did you do to kind of fix those? Was it kind of like rejigging your training split, or was it kind of like prioritizing those things? Like, was there something that like, did you find something that worked to kind of do that?
Yeah, so what I do, like especially in my off season this year, I was trying to bring up my legs and try to bring up those weak body parts. So I was putting more volume towards those muscle groups. So typically I have my volume range between 10 to 20 sets per muscle group. For the muscle groups that need a little bit of extra work, I'll put them up closer to that 20 set mark. For the muscles that are doing pretty well, that kind of just need to maintain, I would kind of get back at the low end. So like about 10 reps, 10, 12 sets per muscle group. So I kind of periodize it like that. And then some training phases I'll have where I'm solely just focused on, say, building my chest. Everything else is kind of just at maintenance. And then some that I'll, like I found that this off season I was really trying to bring up my legs too, because I know I wanted to compete in bodybuilding. So I was training legs like 2 or 3 times per week, getting that frequency up, and having some.
Did you find that like when you're trying to get your frequency up for your legs? I know for me personally, the reason why I cut you off here is because for me personally, training legs, like I always, like, my legs are really, I always train them really hard, because I think the motto is that like, don't skip leg day kind of thing. I think I take that too literal. So every time I go in and train legs, I just completely demolish them. And like the day of, like, after, I'm like, I know I can't walk. And then the second day I'm like, okay, I can walk. But the second and third day is worse than the day after, and it just progressively gets worse. And it's not like an issue, like I didn't injure myself, I don't have any like tears, because I'm fine like 4 days later, and I just do it all over again like the next week. But like I'm telling you, man, like increasing that, did you find, so I guess why I wanted to cut you off was like, did you find that increasing that frequency, obviously you're going to spread out your volume, but like did you find that like there was certain exercises that like you had to like maybe less squats because you just got way too sore from them? Was there any like recovery issues that you experienced with increasing your frequency of training your legs?
So I actually even did like a 5-day full body split where I was training legs every single day too. Like I was experimenting with Jeff Nippard's program there too. And it wasn't too bad at first. Like the first couple weeks, like your legs are just sore all the time. But I find your legs kind of get used to that volume, and then you can start pushing a little bit more. Like you would definitely do have to tone back a little bit on the weights from a recovery standpoint. And with those compound movements, like you want to make sure you're not doing like a back squat and then doing like a deadlift the next day. Like you want to space it out so your lower back gets that recovery as well. And yeah, like from a recovery standpoint too, like that stimulus to fatigue ratio with those compound movements, I wasn't putting quite as many of the compound movements in there too. Like I'll usually have like a day where I'll do like a compound movement for my quads. The next day I'll do more of like an isolation movement, like a leg extension or like a split squat or something like that.
So do you incorporate like a mix of strength training, or obviously strength training, but like do you do like, I guess, do you go any lower than 6 reps? Or what would be the lowest rep range that you would work in?
Typically, like in the past, I would go as low as 4 reps. Nowadays, I typically go between 6 all the way up to like 30 reps, depending on what kind of movement I'm performing. I find from a muscle hypertrophy standpoint, going under 6 is just not very helpful, and it's just more taxing on the joints.
It increases your chance of injury too, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, you're lifting heavy. I find that was the biggest thing. Is I'd always try to go in there, and like deadlifts was something I always try to improve on, right? Like you want to improve on everything, but for me, it's just like deadlifts was my lift. You know what I mean? And to go in there every day, I don't know. I just found like if I just kept going that route, I was like, you know what I need to train smarter instead of harder. So I was like, I got to up that frequency, or I got to up that like rep range, and just working more of like a hypertrophy range versus like strength. Obviously, like if you're working more strength, you're going to be working like you're going to be building a lot of connective tissue, which I feel like I could be lacking because I do have, I don't know, some weird things going on with tendonitis and stuff, and I contributed to like not enough strength training and maybe too much like higher rep stuff. But yeah, that's just kind of like how I'm probably anywhere from like 6 to 8 would be like a compound, like a major movement. But you mentioned your shoulders. You know what I really like for shoulders, for bringing up shoulders, is like you grab a set of heavy dumbbells and you do dumbbell swings. So whatever you can do, like whatever you do for side laterals, pick like double what you can do, and literally just sit there and
just a small range motion, right? Yeah,
swing them and superset that with the laterals. So right after you're done doing that, so let's say you do that with 50s or like 45s or something. You just go. It's like a timed exercise, and then you do 12 reps full. And I'm telling you, man, like I did that the last couple workouts. I think that's going to be a staple. I seen it on John Meadows' channel.
Yeah, that's where I knew I recognized that from somewhere. Yeah, John Meadows, I love his stuff too.
And then I take a lot of stuff from him because he, I don't know. For me, it's like his training style is very like indicative of how I want to train. Like for the most part, like I'm kind of like, I guess I'm an intensity junkie. Like I want to go in there and like, I'd rather like break down muscle than build muscle, knowing that like, knowing that I gave it my all, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like, I find it more rewarding to go in there and kill myself every workout versus like going in there and being like, oh, I hit my 12 sets. Like, you know what I mean? And then like, oh, that's fine. Like tomorrow I'll try to get 13. Like I'm always trying to like push myself. That's where I find, and I find that like supersetting and doing things like that just maybe might not always be the most beneficial because you are like sacrificing recovery. But for me, man, I'm telling you, like for some muscle groups like shoulders is one where you can definitely get away with it, like rear delts and shoulders, like anything where you're going to increase the volume. Like you wouldn't want to do that with like compound lifts or deadlifts or something. But I find like something where it's like a smaller muscle groups like calves or biceps or something like that. But yeah, I found that like I'm going to try that for a bit, but I did it a couple days ago, man. I'm telling you, like when I went home that day, my shoulders have never been sore. Like I couldn't even, like it felt like I was trying to lift 2 cars up on both sides, like doing this, like it was crazy. And I was like, that's gonna grow some seriously big shoulders.
That's awesome. Yeah, like for me, I find doing like those kind of training techniques, like I like to implement them a little bit, but I don't like to go too extreme with them because I know they do produce a lot of fatigue, and then over time, it can be hard to manage that. Your strength might dip down. But like for small like single joint exercises, I think they're great to incorporate. Even incorporating like one of those kind of training techniques once per training session, I find is fine with those isolation movements. But I would probably say stay away from like doing multiple of those every single session because that fatigue is just gonna build up so fast, right? And so.
Yeah, I definitely pick my spots for sure. Like muscle groups that I know that like I'm trying to bring up, or things that I'm trying to like experiment. Like I find that once you do everything, like once you kind of do the same things every time, like you're just like, for me, it's like it's not working. Like I've been trying to bring up my biceps now for like a year, it seems, and like I haven't seen like the results. Obviously, it takes time, but for me, it's more of like, well, it could be an exercise thing, and I know like for me, I know which exercises like I feel the best, which exercise I like the best. There's certain ones where I'm like, all right, I see people doing it, I'm like, that just doesn't work for me. So for me, it's like, well, maybe I'll try some like intensity techniques, trying to like bring up. So for me, shoulders is I mean, every chest exercise is an incline for me. Like I don't do bench press. I stick to like incline dumbbell, I stick to incline flies, and then I might have like a normal press in there. But I'm like, if I'm doing 3 exercises for chest, like at least 2 of them are going to be incline. I'm really trying to bring up that upper chest, and then shoulders for me, like that's not a weak. I wouldn't consider it necessarily like a weak point compared to some of my other areas. But yeah, I just find that like some of those intensity techniques, I'm gonna give a whirl, because it's like exploring new territory where I've never really did it. And then if I find that like, yeah, it's going to be an issue, and like I'm not recovering, I'm sore, I'm not feeling the best, I'm definitely going to tone it back. But yeah, no, for sure. Like I think that I completely agree that you don't want to be doing that every time, because you're just going to eventually, like, you have nowhere to go. You know what I mean? Like if you like display everything that you've got, you're like, all right, like you do that every day. It's like you've got to like progressively add over time.
Yeah, 100%.
In order to like tease your muscles, and then like once your muscles get used to it, you back off. and then you're like, okay, you give them a chance, and then it's like, let's go again. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's kind of like where I got to with trying to bring up points.
And I find too that the end of like a mesocycle or something like that, adding those techniques in, because I like when I periodize like a training phase, like the start of the training phase, like the first week, I usually have it like the lower end of like the RPE, and then as you get closer to that last week of that training phase, I'll have them up at like failure for those isolation movements, up at like an RPE 8 for those compound movements, and then that's where I find even throwing in some of those techniques, like some of those supersets, or I even like, have you heard of antagonist paired sets where you do say like a dumbbell chest press, wait, rest for 2 minutes, and do a dumbbell like seal roll, then wait for 2 minutes and go back. So just having that little bit of recovery can just help you lift a little bit more weight, which is overall going to produce more tension.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think that like pairing like chest and back, like it's something I've never really did. I've done it in the past, but I've never really followed like a split where it was like chest, back, arms, because you'd be working your biceps and triceps, and then like shoulders where you work your front delts, your rear delts. But like, yeah, definitely, I think that like that's something I'm trying to experiment with more. I've been doing, honestly, as much criticism as the bro split gets. I always, it was really loyal to me when I first started, and I did the bro split, and then I did like a modified bro split where it was basically just like added another muscle group in here, or did like, I just added something in, maybe shoulders and arms or something to kind of combine. But then I transitioned to a push-pull legs. So that kind of brings me into my next topic, I guess. I just want to hit on the whole idea of like following a structured program. So for you, do you feel like, so I guess for somebody who's more of an intermediate to advanced, obviously when you're programming for a client, it's going to be different, because you want to give them a set program so they know they have something to like work towards and progressively overload and get used to it. But for someone like you, if you were doing your own programming, let's say, would you kind of like, would you go with a structured program, or would you kind of train like intuitively to like the point where you go in and you're like, you know what, I like this exercise, I'm going to stick with, like, for me, intuitively training would be like going in there, like, I know what I did last week, but like, I'm going to adjust this exercise a little bit more. Like, instead of doing like a machine row, I'll do like a meadows row, and just kind of having like a justification for the changes. Like, I guess, what are your thoughts? That's a lot of information, but I guess, like, what's your thoughts on like a structured program versus like intuitively training for you?
I find as you train longer and longer, having like a super structured program does get a little bit boring. So I definitely see the benefits of switching up the exercises every once in a while there. Especially if that certain exercise isn't feeling good for some reason that day, like switching to a different one and still stimulating it, still getting that proper intensity. But I'm still a strong believer. Like I like to, I still really love just having structured, knowing exactly what kind of like I typically for like my isolation or like kind of secondary multi-joint movements, I'll do like a double progression. So I'll have like a set rep range where I'll be doing like say 3 sets of like 8 to 12 on a certain movement, starting like the first week off at like that 8 repetition with that weight, and then with that weight slowly working up each week up towards that 12 repetition mark, like having that nice gradual progression. I love seeing those numbers go up because I know for sure that I'm getting some sort of progressive overload. I find sometimes if I start swapping movements too much, I find, especially if I forget to keep track of that other movement, and I
Mm.
don't know if I progressed from the last time I did it, that sometimes it just, I don't know if I'm actually progressing. So I really like just that structure of knowing for sure that I'm progressing with it. But I do see the benefit in switching it sometimes, especially if that movement that day just feels like terrible and you're like, man, like I'm gonna do something else. Like that's where I would switch it up if I'm just not feeling that movement. But
Yeah, so a couple of ways. The reason why I thought that way was like, for me, like, I love structure. Like, structure is huge for me, so I do love like following other people's programs. So if I was doing like another person's program, I would 100% follow it. But like for me personally, if I was doing like my own program, which I have been doing for a while now, I like it. Just like one thing that always pissed me off was like going to the gym, and like you get to the gym and that exercise, like let's say you're starting off with the bench press and there's like 5 guys surrounded the bench press, it just kills your whole vibe for the workout. Or if like something as like petty as like machine flies, like a pec deck
yeah,
machine, and
yeah,
like that's like fourth on your workout, and like you're looking over and like there's people on the machine fly, and then you're like, it just kind of interferes with the flow of the workout. So
yeah,
for something like that on the fly, I'd be like, okay, well, is the cables open? You know what I mean? I would think on the spot and be like, okay, well, the machine fly is taken. So what can I do to like make that similar? I'll do a machine fly, or I'll do a cable fly. Sorry, I'll look over, the cable fly will be taken. Then I'm like, okay, I guess it's dumbbells. So
yeah,
for me, it was always, and then I do like dumbbell flies. So for me, it was always the spot of like the uncertainty of like, I don't want to run into that situation because I don't know, for some reason it bothers me, and maybe I'm weird. Like maybe some people it's like, all right, I'll work what I have. And for me, it's like when something's on my program, I feel obligated to do it to the
yeah,
point where it's like it pisses me off and then it sits with me real long. So I'm like, I
yeah,
go home and I'm like, I didn't do pec deck flies, I did dumbbell flies.
yeah,
And it's just like I'm thinking about that the whole time, and I'm like, now I don't got to wait to record. You know what I mean? Now I don't know. I did 45 last week, but I did like
yeah,
35-pound dumbbells, and I'm like trying to do the math in my head, right? And it
yeah,
just for me, so then it got me thinking, well, what if I do intuitively training? And then I was like, you know what, that's much better because then I can kind of like write down a draft workout. So like I basically like tonight, for example, my tomorrow's workout, I'll just kind of like think of some ideas and I'll be like, okay, what kind of things do I want to do? Do I want to do higher volume here? Do I want to focus on this? Do I want to try a new technique here? Or do I want to stick with like the bread and butter and you know what I mean? Do something like that. But just to kind of reiterate on that whole point was like the mind muscle connection for me is huge. Um,
100%.
and I find that like if you're too focused on like progressive overload, even though progressive overload could be progressively overloading on the mind muscle connection, because technically you are trying to get better at the mind muscle connection. So you're trying to like overload the weight while still trying to like connect with that muscle. So to give you an example, like biceps, like if you were doing barbell curls, there comes a point where like you're progressively overloading and then like you're swinging and then like you're not feeling it in your biceps. So for me, I'm always like hesitant to be like, you know what, I'm gonna, as stupid as this might sound, like I'm gonna prioritize the mind muscle connection over the weight. because for me, I'd rather feel it. So if that requires me to actually go down each week, so let's say I start at 60 or 70 for barbell curls, and I'm like, I got it, but like I don't really feel like I got it good, or I didn't hit the muscle the way that I wanted, I'll go down to like 60. And then like mid set, if I'm like, you know what, I'm still not feeling it, I go down to 50. I'm like, okay, 50 is the magic number. Like it's burning at 10. I'm slowing. Like, so for me, that's kind of where I stumbled on like intensity. And I was like, I'm going to slow down the reps. I'm going to try to make the exercise harder. And like, you know what I mean? So that was something I started doing. And that's just kind of like
Nice.
how my thoughts on that whole thing.
Yeah, like I like that too. Like I find I do that with isolation movements. I want to really make sure I feel that movement. But for example, in like a back squat, I don't really focus on like really trying to feel my quads or anything. I just think about the way the bar path is moving, like proper squatting mechanics, and just doing progressive overload with that, and like deadlifts, and like same with bench press. But yeah, I definitely think for doing those isolation movements, even like chest flies, like if you're not feeling a strong contraction there, you definitely want to lower the weight or change that movement up. We want to make sure that you're actually feeling that muscle group work. But like for something like a bench press, no matter what, your chest should be working, your shoulders are going to be working, your triceps. And same with like a back squat, like obviously with different limb lengths and stuff like that. If you have like super long femurs and like a short torso, you might find you feel it more in your back because you have to hinge over more. Your body might not be good, they have good mechanics for like back squats or anything. But for most of the time, it's just like with those kind of movements, just making sure you have good form and progressively overloading it, I find you're gonna see growth no matter what. But there's definitely a time and a place for just really focusing on that muscle contraction. And I think that's, yeah, more of those like kind of secondary multi-joint and isolation movements. Yeah.
So I just kind of want to get into like the intensity aspect again, just right quick. So in terms of like the science, I know this is maybe not controversial, but do you feel like science has kind of taken the fun out of training hard? Like, do you feel like going into the gym, it's like, well, science says this, so I can't train. Like, as like, I guess from like an unnatural, it might be different. Like if you're on steroids or you're doing whatever you're doing, like a cycle, like you might be able to push your body a little bit harder. Oh, you will be not like in fact you would be able to. But like if you like are 100% natural, you're doing it. Like, do you feel like from a natural standpoint, do you feel like intensity is that one thing where it's like it matters or does it matter? Like what do you like? Do you think that like science has taken the fun out of intensity? I guess is kind of like the question.
I find, yeah, like some people I find a lot of people don't train hard enough. They think they're hitting a certain RPE, but they're not. Like they'll be like, send me a video. Oh, this is an RPE 2, and it's like probably like an RPE 6. So like I find a lot of people don't actually train hard enough. Like if you're at an RPE 8, like it should still be like fucking hard. Like it shouldn't be like, oh, that was easy. Like you should still need like that. If you're doing a bench press at an RPE 8, you should still need like that, those 2 or 3 minutes of recovery to feel fully recovered. If you find you did the set like after like 30 seconds, you're like, okay, I could go again, you probably didn't train at the appropriate intensity. So I definitely think a lot of science-based people think that they're training hard enough, but they're not. Like I catch myself doing that sometimes too, especially if I watch a video of myself and I'm watching me do the repetitions, and my last set or my last repetition is actually faster than all my other ones. I'm like, wait a minute, like if it's faster, I'm probably not as close to the failure as I think I am. Like it should, that concentric speed should start to slow down over time. So yeah.
I find also that like it feels harder than it looks sometimes. Like sometimes I'll be like, I remember I used to film myself doing bench press, and I was trying to get up to like a certain weight bench pressing, and like I remember like it felt so friggin' heavy. And like I was like, I'd crack out 10 reps, and that 10th rep, like for me, it felt like it wasn't gonna go up like at all. Yeah. But like when I rewatched the footage of the video, I was like, people would probably say that's an RP7. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like for me, like maybe it is an RP7, maybe it's an RP 7.5 or 8. Yeah. So then that was where I was like, it's kind of foggy, and I was like, you kind of have to have an idea of like your own body, and kind of like, yeah, somebody can say it's an RP this, but like obviously there's parameters to say, well, 2 reps in reserve, where it's like an RPE 8, like could you have got 2 more reps like without breaking down your form? And that's kind of always something I think about, is like, well, I probably could have got 2 more reps without actually cheating, or I probably could have got 1 more. But like for me, it's like the borderline of like which exercises to push it on. Like obviously you don't want to be RPE 10 for squats, because like the bar is just going to kill you if you if you don't get that, especially if you don't have a spotter. But for something like leg extensions, it's like if you go up like halfway, okay, you can just drop the weight, right? So that's something I always was like, you know what, I'm just going to train hard. So I've been always trying to like work up to like a top set where it's like, you know what I mean? Like if I'm doing something like I'll use leg extensions as an example. If I'm doing leg extensions, I'll like pyramid up. So I'll like, not always, but generally what I'll do is I'll start with like 80, 90, and then 100. And then like that 100 will be pretty hard, like let's say. And then I'll make a decision in my head. Like, should I do a drop set? Do I feel like I want to do a drop set? Do I want to, do an extra set? Like, so for me, it's always that, like, I get to that third set. I'm like, okay, well, should I add a set? Or do I want to add an extra set and go up to 120? Or do I want to completely bust a muscle and just do like a triple drop set or a double drop set or like, so then some days I'm just like, okay, I'll go in, I'll do my straight sets where I do, I'll go and put it on 100 and I'll do 3 sets of 10. You know what I mean? And I'll be happy with that. But yeah, I found that was an interesting topic. But for me, because like I love science and I love everything like the science does, and I think that there's like obviously it's science, so it makes sense and everything. But training for like a natural can kind of get, I wouldn't say boring, but like I always found that's when I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna have fun, because like at the end of the day, it's a difference between like adhering to a program and not adhering. And at the end of the day, you're better off like as long as you're not risking injury. I want to go in there and train hard and do what I want to do. And then, like I said, if I break down a little bit of muscle, I break down a little bit of muscle, lesson learned. And then I'll try to like adapt that into like more of like, all right, maybe I'll do it less, or maybe I'll do it like, depending on how I feel and depending on how, like the results that I see. But for me, that was one aspect where I was like, I can manage the volume. I can spread out my weekly volume. I can follow like a good split. But when it comes to like exercises, I'm a big intuitive trainer. Personally, for me, for clients, I would never tell somebody to go in there and do what they feel. Because that would just you're better.
And that's where when I create programs for people, I ask them specifically like what their style of training is, because I want to make a program that obviously has some structure that follows all those training principles. But yeah, if the program is going to be super boring to them, they're going to be less likely to actually want to go to the gym and actually do the exercises. So I think adherence is probably like the number one thing for to see results, right? It's because you actually need to go to the gym and do them. Like if the program's not the most optimal, but you're more likely to go to the gym on that program, it's going to be a better program than the optimal program, if that makes sense. Yeah,
and it makes 100%. That's what I found not training hard, which is weird because a lot of people don't want to train hard. But for me, it's like the opposite. If I can't go in there and train hard, then it kind of defeats my motivation, because I'm like, I hate leaving like, I could leave the same and probably get the same result, maybe even a better result from training a little bit less hard and periodizing over the week and making it make more sense, like long-term wise. But for me, the feeling of like accomplishment, the feeling of like that whole adherence, like that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. Like that for me, that's how I can kind of like it. That's what makes me crave going to the gym, is just how can I be like 1% more crazy? Like,
but yeah, you also have to watch with that. Like, do you know like Patty, how he got rhabdo? That condition where I can't remember exactly what happens with the condition, but it's from like overtraining where his muscle cells actually started dying, I think in his legs or something. So he actually
I heard about that, but I don't know how he got it.
Yeah, he was just because he loved training to failure too, so he was just so fatigued. I think it was after like competing for a couple different shows. He had a long competition season, and then it just kind of hit him after those shows were done. He was training legs one time, and I can't remember the exact story, but I think he like collapsed, and like they had to bring him to like the hospital, and then he couldn't even train his legs hard for I think like 6 months to a year. He had to tone back on them just to let all those muscle cells recover. But yeah, so there's definitely a point where you can overtrain it, but like obviously managing if you started getting like symptoms like really really bad cramps and stuff like that. Like he said I think he was saying his full body just like completely cramped up and he could like barely move. Yeah,
that was when I seen that when it happened or whatever. I heard about when it happened, but that was the first time I ever heard of it as well. So like I was doing a little bit of research trying to like figure out like what, you know what I mean, like what was going on and like what happened. But yeah, That's absolutely insane. I never even would have thought about that.
But I think the main thing was just being in prep so long. Like his muscles probably weren't getting the proper nutrition, just being in that deficit for so long and doing. Because I think that was after him doing his second bodybuilding show or something like that, where he got to some crazy levels of conditioning. I think that's when it was. I could be wrong. But yeah.
I remember I don't know if you've ever did this before, but I remember I went as crazy as doing 2-a-day workouts.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought I was hardcore. I mean, I was, because I mean, I was doing it, but like I was doing 2-a-day workouts where it kind of got to the point where it wasn't really 2 a day. I just split up my training. So like, if I was doing like a push workout, like it would be like, I don't know, chest in the morning, and then like finish off, go back in the evening and do like triceps and whatever was left, like abs or shoulders, you know what I mean? Like I would finish off the portion of the push workout. But I remember like I was doing 2-a-days there for a while, and then I kind of like educated myself on 2-a-days, and then like I was trying to up my calories and trying to like plan my meals. And then I realized, you know what, like unless you have a home gym, or like unless you have like that's what you need to do in order like to fit your lifestyle, where it's like, all right, I only have like 30 minutes in the morning and I only have 30 minutes in the evening, well, let's do 2-a-days. You know what I mean? Let's before work, let's do some chest, and then after work, let's do some shoulders. Like, but for me, it was just because I was addicted. You know what I mean? It was just like I just wanted to be in the gym. I didn't have an issue, and people were like, man, like people were at the gym, like I wouldn't say they thought I was crazy, but I was literally there twice a day, like every day for like at least 2 months, and like I'd see the same people, and then people would ask, "Is this your second session or your first session?"
Yeah.
And then like and then it was like 3-a-days, because I started filming. So
Okay.
I would do 2 workouts, but then one workout would be exclusively for getting content. So like I wasn't really training, but I was training. And then I was like, well, that's too much. So then I'm going to devote that second workout to getting content. So like I started doing my training, and then I started separating the content. So for example, if I was hitting like legs, you know what I mean? Then I wouldn't be able to get leg content because I would already do my legs. So I would get like chest content or something where it was like, but then I started mixing them where I was like, you know what, I'll just film my workout. And then I found that like it started interfering with my workout because I was too busy like trying to set up the camera and people like watching and shit. And I was just like, all right, like my workouts are suffering because I'm trying to film the workouts. So like at the end of the day, like I've tried 2-a-day workouts. I've tried like, but I feel like it would be beneficial if you were like, if you had your own gym, you know what I mean? At your home, and like that was the time that you had to do it, or like maybe you just liked it. You know what I mean? You wanted to work out twice, like you wanted to do chest in the morning and do shoulders in the evening, like whatever, right? Like at the end of the day, you're achieving the same result.
Yeah.
But you have to like spread out your calories and like do it differently for like meal timing and everything like that, right? So
100%, man. Sweet.
So in terms, I just kind of want to dive in a couple more training things, and then we'll move on to some nutrition. So I guess what do you feel is like, we'll start off with we'll do overrated and underrated, but I guess like what do you feel is like the most overrated part of training in general? Like what do you think people are like get too caught up on?
I would say rest times. Like a lot of people get so caught up in trying to hit like a specific amount of time to rest between each set, when like the research has shown that most of the time, if you can kind of what's the term for it? Usually you can feel when when you're recovered and you can go to your next set. Like they've even shown like having like 3 to 5 minutes of rest after like compound movement is going to be more beneficial rather than just resting like 60 seconds. So I find so many people put so much emphasis on rest times when I don't think they're that important. Pretty much just rest as much as you feel like
Did you
you need
ever
rest.
tackle the timer yourself and like?
Yeah.
That's not like. They're just sitting there, like you're not on your phone. You're just watching your timer.
yeah. Like there's obviously like for certain like doing the isolation movements, maybe having a little bit less rest is probably going to be more beneficial, accumulate more metabolic fatigue. But like for most of the time, I would say just rest how long you need to. Like with my programming for clients, I do have rest times, and they can use like the stopwatch on like the training app, but like it's not really like you don't have to be super strict about it. Just go when you feel like you're recovered. Obviously don't go to the extreme where you're resting for like 10-12 minutes, but like kind of be within like a certain parameter.
I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like for people that like they rest too long because they end up like if like you're familiar with people at the gym, it's like you do a set of bicep curls and then like you talk to a couple people, you like take around the gym to see, and then like next thing you know, it's like 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's it.
You're like, oh man, how'd your show? Oh, the show was great. Blah blah blah. I'm doing this now. Blah blah. Oh yeah, how's the girlfriend? Oh, she's good. You know what I mean? It's just like the next thing you know, you go back and like someone stole your bar. You don't even got the. And then you end up doing, you get away with like one set of bicep curls, and you're like, ah, screw it, I'll do something. I'll do something else. You know?
I get you there. I definitely get you there.
But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the most overrated would probably be like the workout splits. I feel like to me, it's like people put so much emphasis on like which training split is the best and which one's going to get the best results, and like. At the end of the day, I mean, it matters. I can't say that it doesn't matter because obviously you need to like train effectively and like spread your, but I think that from like everyone, like that's the number one question that people are asking, like bodybuilders. And it's like, you can clearly see just by going on their Instagram, like what they're doing. It's like they're hitting a bro split or they're hitting like a modified bro, or some of them now I found that like some of the bodybuilders are doing push-pull legs. So like Regan and Antoine and like a couple like the like the ones that I follow anyways, like I know a lot of them are doing like different, but I think at the end of the day, it's like you can only do what you can recover from. So like if you can't recover from something, like I know going back to our discussion on legs, like I wouldn't be good with like an upper lower because like I might be, but like I would have to like figure it out because I would just hit legs way too hard. And then it would end up turning into like an upper, lower, upper, lower. You know what I mean? Where then I would basically look like I don't even know. I would look weird because my upper body would be like this and like not recover. And like I have so many like muscle imbalances and everything. But that would probably be my thing. Is just that people put a lot of emphasis on like, and I think availability too. It's like people don't have the availability that they think. In order to follow a split, they're like, oh yeah, they get into it. I found out that was a one thing with clients and stuff too. It's like they'll tell you that they're able to do whatever you want, and they'll tell you like they're able to do this and be in the gym that and be able to do the cardio. And then like week 2, it's like, oh, I didn't get my workout in, or you know what I mean, something happened, and it's like now I have to skip that work. It's like, do I skip? I have people messaging me like, do I skip that workout and move on to the next one? I'm like, no, you just follow suit. Like you're not going to skip a workout. Like that just sucks that you. So I think the biggest thing for me is just people overvalue the training splits, and they don't put enough time into actually like recovering and like overloading and like feeling the exercise. Yeah. So in terms of like underrated, what do you think that a lot of people like you could see people doing a better job of, or people don't really like they don't really think that is as important maybe as it is?
I would say tracking your weight. Like a lot of people like. You don't see many people tracking their weight on like a notepad or on their phone or anything. They just kind of go to the gym and they end up hitting the weight. They're like, oh yeah, I'm probably progressing. They think they're progressing week to week, but then when you actually look at it, they're usually sometimes hitting the exact same weight all the time, and you don't know if they're even progressing. So I find just making sure you're either writing it down on your phone in a notepad, even if you don't have a structured program, even writing down your weights each week just to give you an idea of where you were last week, so that you know, okay, maybe I have to go a little bit heavier. Maybe I have to slow this repetition down to make it a little bit more difficult. Like little things like that, right? Like, definitely just writing down your weights that you're lifting.
I find that you see a lot of people doing that like in the first week of January. You know what I mean? Like when the gym's like everyone's got their New Year's resolutions, and they're like, okay, I'm going to properly apply progressive overload. You know what I mean? Like I'm actually going to do this. Like I'm going to write down, and then you see everybody with their log books, like first week of January, everyone's at the dollar store buying log books. And then like you get to the gym, everyone's like, oh wow, everybody like, what are you doing now? You're tracking your weights. It's like, yeah, I want to try to track my weights. And then like February comes and it's like, all right, I guess I'll go back to the pro split.
Exactly.
Like,
and
where did the logbook go? I just got frustrated bringing the pen, and it's like, oh, I forgot my logbook. But no, I totally agree. I think that like people, I agree with that one, that people don't really, and I'm guilty of that as well, because I find that like for me, it's like that's the biggest thing that like if you're going to the gym and you have no idea of like what you did before, and like I don't find that tracking the weights, I mean, obviously tracking the weights is very important, but I think the number one thing that I got from the logbook was how I was feeling. I would always, as stupid as it sounds, I would make it like my diary. When I actually did it consistently, I can't say I really do that anymore. I kind of have an idea, but I think I should do it more, to be honest with you. But I think that like having like an idea of how I'm feeling, where it's like I go into the gym, I'm like, all right, my back was sore, like I felt that in my elbow, or like, oh my God, like that felt awesome. I like that third set, like RPE 8, and I was like, all right, like why was it RPE 8? You know what I mean? The last week it was like RPE 9. So it's like just having those mental notes where it's like instead of just being like dumbbell press 80, dumbbell press 85, like being able to like actually like write down little things under it, like being able to have that to look back on the week where it's like it almost gives you flashbacks, or like you showed up late, you know what I mean? Like didn't expect to work out today, got motivated late, went into the gym on the rest day, had a killer workout, should work out more on rest days.
Yeah, I find another good way to, or good things to write down is cues. Like sometimes I'll be doing a certain movement and I'll slightly tweak it just a little bit, and it feels so much better. And then just thinking or like writing that down, like what cue I use to have that movement feel better. I find that has always like really helped me out.
That for me, I can relate to that with dumbbell press, because I would like incline dumbbell press, like I would do it more open. And then eventually,
Mostly,
like I made it where I was like I turned my wrist, instead of like having that stress placed on the shoulder, it was more placed on my chest. So I was almost doing like a press like this versus like that.
Yeah.
And like I didn't realize until I actually filmed myself and like was like, all right, well, like why am I feeling it more on my shoulder? And then ever since I made that adjustment, I literally do not do a single exercise different. Like I always do incline dumbbell press every chest day. Whether or not I start off with it, like whatever it is, like if it's a chest focused, like sometimes I'll go in there and I'll start off with triceps just to change it up. Because I mean, I want to bring up my arms. So like obviously I can't focus on chest all the time. Like I had to prioritize like triceps. So sometimes I'll go in there and like do triceps, then do chest. But every time pretty much like at least like maybe even twice a week, sometimes like at least once a week I'll do an incline dumbbell press. And then like ever since I found that out, like that I'm like I made that mental note to myself. It was a totally different exercise. Like it just completely changed the way that I did. And same thing with like dumbbell curls. Like that's another one that I changed completely. Like how you like alternate. So like when you come up, you alternate like that.
Yeah.
I stopped doing that, and I just did non-alternating. And I found that for me, for some reason, felt way better, because I always hated dumbbell curls, and everyone used to see them doing them. I was just like, I'd much rather do something different than a dumbbell curl. But ever since I stopped like alternating, and I'd literally just do straight dumbbell curls, it gave me a completely different. It just could transform the exercise to something so simple. So.
And that's another great point that you brought up there, is filming yourself. I find that's another thing that not many people do. And it's so beneficial, because a lot of times you're like, oh, I think I'm doing this movement correctly. And like, you know how to perform the movement correctly, but you film yourself and you see that there's something's just slightly off. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I am maybe rounding my back there. Maybe I am, flaring the elbows out too much. Like I find that just so important. And I feel like a lot more people should film themselves. I know sometimes it can be awkward in the gym when you're trying to set something down and film it, or get somebody to film it for you. But I find there's just so much, you can benefit so much from it.
Especially if you don't, I feel like the biggest thing is like, especially if you don't train with somebody, because like I've never really, I can't say I really consistently I've trained with people in the past, like lots of times, but like, and I guess you could say I had a training partner like for a couple of months there, like when the schedule was aligned. But for the most part, like I just like training alone anyways. Like unless I'm training with someone who I wouldn't say is like better than me, but like who's somebody that like I'm learning from, where it's like maybe they're trying to teach me something or they're trying to do something, I'm able to like look up to them. But like for me, I motivate myself. So like when I go in there, it's just like I like to be able to put my headphones on and go in the zone. And I literally don't look at it like a single person when I'm at the gym. Like some people, you'll sit there and like they'll be looking around, and I'm not even doing, like I'm literally just sitting there staring at the floor, like waiting for like someday, like not every day, but some days if I'm doing dumbbell press, I'll just like be sitting there in between sets, just looking at the floor like this, and then go to the next set. Like I'm just trying to get completely focused, because if I like look away or I do something like that's going to distract me, it just completely throws off. And then like same thing with rest times, like it will just like I'll be like, oh, was that set number 2 or 3 or 4? Like I don't even. So that's just another thing where it's like completely focused. But yeah, filming yourself I think is huge, like, especially if you don't work out. But I think the one thing that I've noticed was like it's so awkward when people are saying stuff. Like I've had a couple people say some stuff, and it's just like, all right, I'll put the camera away, or like I'm basically bringing in, like I used to bring in the film crew every time I used to film. Like I had like I was like one step away from having lighting, you know what I mean? Like where it was like I had the camera, the tripod, the change of clothes, the new pair of shoes, like I had everything, like script and everything, like. And then it got to the point where like I had to go like after hours, so like I'd go at midnight, I'd go at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would just get the content that I needed. And then I started batching content, and that was game changer. I literally just come up with ideas a month in advance. I'm like, okay, I want to put this type of content this month. What can I batch? Like, what can I shoot? Like, if I'm going in for a workout today, what kind of clips can I get to like have that content available for when I need it, instead of like trying to get it the day of when I need it. And it's like people are being like weird that day, and you just can't put out content because. So that was the biggest thing I changed for consistency, was just like batching content, like planning ahead, and like not really give. Like, I can't say I really give a crap about what people say. Like if someone's being rude, I don't. But if someone's being nice, I do. Like if somebody's telling me not to film and they're being nice about it, like I don't like. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, like whatever.
Yeah.
But like I'm not going to stop filming just because someone's being an asshole. Like I'll let the gym people come up to me like to tell me like to stop filming. If it's like a gym personnel or somebody, like for sure. But like I mean, I'm not bothering anybody. Like one time I was foam rolling in the corner of the gym, like all the way, and this like girl like walked up to me, like she was like on the other side of the gym. She must have seen me like doing another exercise and see me doing it. Anyway, she walked over and she's like, "Can you please stop filming yourself foam rolling? Like, what are you even filming?" She was having like a shitty day or something. She was like, "What are you even doing? Nobody wants to see you foam." Like, yeah, you know what? I just was sarcastic with you. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. People don't want to see me foam roll. I was like, I wasn't like filming. Anyways, I was like, I wasn't going to get into it. She was having a shitty day, and she was just she was basically saying foam rolling so stupid. And I was like, pull out the pen and start like educating her on the reasons. Like, actually, miss, you should foam roll because. It's like. Anyways, I didn't want to be. But anyways, I stopped filming. But like, it was just like it was kind of stupid to me, and it bothered me for like a week because I was like I wasn't even like. Anyways, and then I didn't film that whole week of content because I was just like, that stupid girl just threw me off.
and that happens, and you just have to kind of it sucks too. Like especially with like social media, sometimes you get that one just negative comment that just kind of gets you. But it's one of those things where it's gonna happen with social media and filming yourself. There's always gonna be people judging, and it sucks sometimes. But just gotta get.
I have a funny thing in every video I didn't notice. But there was one guy who kept commenting, and it was hilarious. He said like my fingers were glued together, and he's like, "Why?" It's like, "Why in every video is your fingers glued together?" And I was like, "That's the stupidest comment I ever heard. What the hell? My fingers are glued together." And I look back on every video, man, and I'm like this. I'm sitting, like explaining my videos, and I'm like trying to like, but like for some reason, like when you're talking and you're doing this, for some reason I didn't separate my hands. I went like this, and like you picked up on it, but like I would have never like noticed that because like watching back, you're like, all right, like, and then I looked back on every like the last 10 videos that I did, and I was like, man, my fingers are glued together. I was like, I actually like gave him praise for the comment. I was like, I wasn't an asshole about it. I was like, that's actually hilarious. I was like, my fingers are. I'll try to make an effort next time to unglue my fingers. Like,
that's so funny.
Like ever since I've been trying to like sit down in my videos or like do something where I'm not standing up, where like I give myself the opportunity to get nervous and do this. So I'm like, but I find it funny. But like people always come up with like the realist things sometimes, like especially when people are pissed off and like you catch them on a bad day. It's just like, you know what? All right. Like you have nothing to say. Like you want to be like a dick back, but like at the end of the day,
there's no point. Like,
no, you're like, you're right. Like I'll move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to kind of touch on nutrition right quick. We don't have to go over all the topics, but I just kind of want to touch on a couple things. So in terms of your pre and post workout nutrition, like obviously meal timing is huge, and I guess like how seriously do you take your meal timing? Is it something that you take seriously like all year round when you're bulking, or is it something that you just try to adhere to when you can? I guess like how does that go for you, I guess?
So for myself, like I definitely for contest prep want to make sure it's on point, like spacing out my meals. Like I try to get at least 4 meals a day with protein, kind of evenly distribute them between 2 or 3 hours apart, or I guess 2 to 4 hours apart. and having most of my carbohydrates kind of around my training sessions is to provide me with the most amount of energy, and typically you get a better pump a little bit too with more of that muscle glycogen. And then I'll usually kind of space out my fat a little bit farther away from my training sessions, just with it slowing down digestion and stuff like that. But I find for pre and post workout, like there's that 2 hour time limit before and 2 hour after. A lot of people think about they have to slam like a protein shake right after their meal to see the best result. I don't really believe in that. Like I believe that as long as you get some sort of meal with protein in within 2 hours before your workout and then within 2 hours after, I think you'll be completely fine. Same with I find too, for a lot of people that are just like lifestyle clients, I don't worry about it at all just to start off with. I just worry about them getting their calories in, getting their macros in. If they're doing some sort of meal plan, then I'll kind of have it a little bit more periodized, so that they're having more of their carbs and stuff around their training. But I don't try to be super strict with it right off the bat, because there's no point of being perfect with having a perfect plan that they're not going to follow. So yeah.
So I guess like to kind of follow that to make that make a little bit more sense. I think what you need to consider when you're like even considering like pre and post workout nutrition is like when you're training. Because I think that a lot of people like they'll vary when they train. Like they might train in the morning sometimes, and then the weekends they train in like the afternoon. Whereas like the weekdays they train in the evening. So I guess like personally for you, do you stick to like the same time every day that you train, or does it vary? Like do you vary your nutrition? Like maybe weekends you might sleep in a little bit more, or like is there times where you try to like do that? Like is your training consistent to the point where like, all right, I have this, I have that, and then like you know exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, so most of my training is typically around like 2 p.m. each day. Just on the weekends, sometimes I'll train in the morning, and I'm typically getting up around like 5 o'clock every morning. So it's my meals and everything are usually pretty consistent throughout the day. But yeah, like especially if you're having those workouts in the evenings, obviously you're gonna have to taper your nutrition a little bit around having more of those carbohydrates in the evening. And yeah.
So I just want to bring up something that might be beneficial for people. So let's say you're like an early morning trainer, and like you have to work at like 9 o'clock, let's say, and you have to train at like 6 in order to get like a 2 hour workout in. What would you recommend for somebody that like has to eat before they train at 6, but they don't want to like get up at like 4, you know what I mean, and cook breakfast and get a solid meal? And like, what would you recommend for somebody who's got to train at 6, who's got that 2 hours, but and they have to train in the morning? Like, what kind of nutrition strategies would you like think about for somebody that's in that situation?
Yeah, so if it's super close, some sort of like high glycemic, like carbohydrate, something fast absorbing is probably going to be most beneficial if you're having it like right before you go to the gym. Having like a fast absorbing protein, like a whey protein powder, is going to be more beneficial than having some large meal that's slower digesting. That's you might get like an upset stomach while you're training if you're having that massive meal right before your training session in the morning.
Yeah, I think like for clients that I had one client that was like that, and I basically just told them to meal prep before. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to bed that night, like meal prep something. Like for me, I'm hard on the overnight oats now. I used to be like the breakfast guy. I used to like do like the strict oatmeal, like where I just put plain oatmeal and have like egg whites and eggs, and like that used to be my breakfast. It worked for a while. I was like egg whites, eggs, like a cup of egg whites, 2 eggs, and then like a cup of oats, and then whatever I chose to put in the oats, whatever. But like, yeah, and then I was like, you know what? Like, I just want to like wake up and have breakfast. I don't want to have to worry, because I think my biggest pet peeve is dishes. Because I don't have a dishwasher, like, so like I have to hand wash every dish. I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate to that. But like eating like 5 meals a day and like not having like a dishwasher, it sucks. I feel like my full-time job is literally doing dishes. Like I thought about putting because I spend that much amount of time. I feel like I spend that much. I don't like, but like, I mean, anyways, I was like, you know what? I just want to like have like my meals. I don't want to have to like do dishes in the morning. Like I want to be able to eat my breakfast and just whatever. So for me, it was like overnight oats. It was just, I would do 5 days of overnight oats and put them in the fridge, and I would just grab and go and then replace them. And it made grocery shopping really easy as well, because I knew how much I had. Like I was like, all right, well, I need Greek yogurt, or I need like oats or whatever. Like I knew, because I was like, oh, I have 5 days and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to say is like I told people to kind of like prepare in advance. So like instead of waking up in the morning and like portioning out their Greek yogurt and doing like weighing it up in the morning, weigh it up and put it in the fridge and put some fruit on it, and then maybe put a protein, like a scoop of protein powder in there, and then like you have that ready to go, and then all you have to do in the morning is like eat it. Like you don't have to worry about like cooking anything. So I always try to find like ways where it's like, well, you don't have to think about like cooking the most like gourmet meal. You know what I mean? Like even a protein shake and like a thing of fruit. Like if you got like a little bit of like a kiwi and a banana and then like have a protein shake, like you can pretty much get everything you need and give you some energy and like just have that. But yeah, I think that like that's a funny situation that I always find that people are always like, oh yeah, I have to train at this time and like I want to eat and all this, and it's just like, well,
Yeah.
this is like, yeah, it's either you have to or you don't, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. And then with that too, like I find I have most of my clients meal prep twice per week. So once on that Sunday night, once on like the Thursday night,
yeah,
just keep the food a little bit fresher. And I find that's so helpful, especially for people that have super busy days and just having those meals prep. Like obviously you don't have to prep absolutely every meal of the day, but prepping those main meals just makes your life so much easier. And yeah, makes it so you don't
100%.
have to.
I 100% agree with that. And another reason to kind of add to that is that like what happens if you want to change it up? You know what I mean? Like if you got like 6 days prepped, like that sucks because you're wasting food or you don't want to eat it. But like on day 3, like what happens if you don't want chicken anymore and you want fish?
Yeah.
Or like what happens if like you were like, you know what, let's change this. It makes it easier for you to be able to change somebody's without having like them feel like they wasted a bunch of food or cooked a bunch of food. And then also, like you said, it gives that freshness because like I'm used to eating some pretty shitty foods. Like, you know what I mean? I can eat cold rice, I can eat like whatever, but like at the end of the day, I think that like finding ways to kind of enjoy it a little bit more, and like if you can freshly cook chicken, like even better. I totally agree with that. I think that like that's what I do. I try to meal prep as and going back to the dishes thing. I mean, I do hate doing dishes, but like I do prefer doing the dishes over like shitty food. If I can have
100%.
if I can have a chicken breast that's like 2 days old versus a chicken breast that's like 7 days old, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm gonna go with the 2 day old.
100%, man.
So in terms of like some of the diet foods, I just want to move into this, and then we'll kind of like move into social media a little more, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. But in terms of the diet foods, do you find like in an off season, are there certain foods that kind of carry over from your off season to your bulk that like maybe considered diet foods? So for example, to give you an idea, like for me, like peanut butter, instead of eating peanut butter, I have powdered peanut butter year round. And I just find that like it's way lower in calories and it basically does the same thing. So do you find that there's anything that you like, or like, I guess like maybe not necessarily you, but like any foods that you try to introduce to people that are struggling with weight loss that might be like, you know, they're like, well, I like this, but like, for example, soda, diet soda,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like easy fixes where it's like, do you find any like common ones where you're like, wow, that really helped that person or that
Yeah.
really helped?
I find with popcorn, like a lot of people have like greasy popcorn. You can buy from like even Walmart, like the low fat popcorn that's very low in calories. Like I find that's a good one. There's also like Jello where you can get like those Jello things, which it's only 6 calories. So if you're really craving something sweet, like some little dessert thing, having that, or even putting like food coloring or that where you would squirt it in your water. I can't remember what it's called, but you can squirt it on
Oh,
like Greek yogurt.
yes. Okay. Yeah. I know. Like
Yeah,
the in flavors or the I know what you're
yeah,
talking about. I can't
yeah.
think
You
of the name.
can,
Like almost like the stevia drops, but
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, and like you can like squirt that on like Greek yogurt, or yeah, like just low fat Greek yogurt, make it taste a little bit better, and like little tricks like that I found have helped. Obviously, like diet pop, even like carbonated water. Sometimes you just really want that something sweet, that works well. For me lately, that's been helping me curve my hunger a little bit more and fill up my stomach is just having larger volume foods like having a lot more salads, so having like lettuce, having spinach, having bell peppers, cucumbers, all these foods where you can have a massive bowl of it and it's only like 300 like 250 calories, and it just kind of fills up your stomach. Obviously for me in competition prep right now, I still feel hungry after that. Like my stomach physically feels full, so I kind of get some relief from it. But yeah, little tricks like that I find can go a long way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, like, just to kind of touch on this one last day on this, but I feel like a lot of people where they overdo it is with the condiments, because like they like I remember like I don't know, like one person I remember they were tracking their calories and then like they had everything perfect and I was like they didn't track their condiments and like they didn't track their salad dressings, they didn't track their ketchup, they didn't track their barbecue sauces, their like whatever they were putting on things. And like that made a huge difference, right? Like I know personally for me, like the first time I tried like, like sugar-free ketchup and like the Stubbs barbecue sauce, like it does taste different. And like you can buy those Walden Farms products. Like I remember I bought my girlfriend bought the coffee cream a couple days ago. It tastes like poop, but like it wasn't great. But like there are certain things that actually do taste good. Like the pancake syrup's pretty good, and like the chocolate syrup's not too bad. Like as long as you can get over like the consistency part. But I think that like coming from like a diet perspective, if like once you get used to them, it's like the new normal. Like I remember I was like going back to my example of peanut butter. Like I just ate powdered peanut butter. Like I transitioned to powdered peanut butter because it was way low in calories, and I was like, well, I can do this. And then I remember I was off peanut butter for such a long time, and then one day I had peanut butter, and I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
Just so good, yeah.
Ruined it because I was missing. But like I got so used to the diet food that it just became like the new normal, where it was like, that's the food I eat, like, and like it was sustainable. Like I enjoyed it. Like it wasn't like but like knowing what you're giving up after like giving up for such a long time, like having ketchup instead of like no sugar added ketchup, or having like an actual Jello instead of like a low sugar. You're just like, oh man, mind blown. Like I can't like I'll just have my cheat meal tonight. Like I'll just have like Jello and like a thing of regular ketchup. But I feel like that's the number one thing that like people just don't consider, and like there's so many different substitutes for that kind of stuff. And people are like, well, I can't give up that. I'm like, well, you can, but you just need to find a different way to do it. But yeah, that's always an interesting question, because I always find that like I learn something new from somebody every time I like talk to people about like, oh, what do you do? What do you put on your salad? Like I know for me, like mustard was huge, because like I didn't realize it until I actually dieted that like mustard 0 calories. And it's like, all right, mustard on everything. I'd be barbecuing chicken. I'd be putting mustard on. I'd be marinating the mustard. I remember I went to the Sobeys mustard aisle and I was like, holy shit. Like there's so like brown mustard, honey mustard, barbecue mustard. I couldn't believe, like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, this is groundbreaking. I was like 10 calories, 15 calories, 5 calories, 0. And I was just,
I was the exact same way too. Like I remember my brother would always look at me weird, like, why do you put so much mustard on it? Like I would, I was the same way. Like I would put it on like rice, I'd put it on everything I was eating. I would even like sometimes like drink a little bit of it like at the end of prep, just because I was just so hungry. I just needed some sort of sensation. And then after prep, I was like, man, this is disgusting. Like about a month after prep, I was like, I couldn't even have mustard. I was like, how the fuck did I like this before? Like it's so weird how your taste buds just change over time while you're
things with like just losing taste for it. Like I think that like definitely mustard for me wasn't one, but I feel like I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there was definitely a thing like green beans. I can't eat green beans. Because I ate so many goddamn green beans. Just shoved it, and it was like it was basically like a challenge. Like it just looked so horrible. I remember like my parents watching me, and they're like, "You look horrible. Like you look miserable." And I was like, I am miserable. Like I feel like I need to eat green beans, because like if I don't, like this is my carbs. Like you don't understand. Like I'm basically in like Auschwitz. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like I'm just like, this is the only meal that I get. Like of course I'm going to eat the green beans. And everybody's like, you don't need to eat those green beans. And I'm like, trust me, if you were on the calories that like I was on, you would want to eat those green beans, and you would put mustard on it. But yeah, I find that's always the funny one. So I just kind of want to move into one more topic. So this is a good one. I guess like in terms of your nutrition, like how has your nutrition evolved since you first started? So like from where you started, like looking back at like you when you first competed, you first started getting into like some like bodybuilding and competing, and like transitioning into like, was it like a health thing for you, or was it like maybe these low calorie food hacks, or was it just like, what for you from a nutritional standpoint was like something that like, you know what I mean, you learned over time?
Just having variety with your diet. Like when I first started my first prep, I was having like the basics, like the chicken, the rice, the veggies, having almost the exact same meals, meal to meal to meal to meal, just a super kind of like old style bodybuilding diet. And then over time, I was able to learn that you can actually have pretty well whatever you want in moderation. There's so many different substitutes for different types of food, like you've been talking about, that your diet doesn't have to be super restrictive. Like you can do what other, like any form of diet you want really, and it's gonna work. Like you can do keto if you find keto is the best for you. You track your calories, you hit your macros appropriately. You can do keto. You can do like a high carb, low fat diet. Like all of these diets work if you're in a calorie deficit and you have optimal amount of protein. Obviously, some are going to work better for others. But yeah, it's just like just energy balance, right? Like having the knowledge around that, having the knowledge around your metabolism, like when you diet down, that your NEAT's going to drop, your metabolism will down regulate, and understanding why you need to reduce your calories over time and stuff like that, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a
yeah.
good one. I think protein intake is always the controversial one where people are like, you know what, you can't eat enough protein, but at the end of the day, it's like you can eat enough protein because if you're eating enough protein, if you're eating too much protein, you're taking away from all the other nutrients that, you know what I mean, you could be prioritizing that could have other benefits. So it's like instead of eating like 300 grams of protein a day, like bump it down to 200 grams a day. You've got an extra 100 grams that you could like break up into carbs before your workout, or actually enjoy some ketchup, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
with your meal, instead of like, so like instead of actually trying to like, people are like, oh man, I can't believe like how hard it is to get like 150 grams of protein. And I'm like, well, it is hard to get 150 grams of protein if you're not used to getting 150 grams of protein.
Yeah.
But like once you're used to eating like 250 grams of protein a day, it's like that's all you know. And like it's hard not to eat. Like once you kind of get into that, it's hard not to. But like I feel like a lot of people, once they kind of like eat a lot of protein, they realize that they can do it. They just force feed protein where it's like it might not be beneficial, because at the end of the day, it's just gonna, your body can only use so much, and your body can only absorb so much, so it's just gonna get absorbed as fat. And like, why not actually enjoy like a bag of chips or something where you can actually put towards your carbs and like increase your carb intake? So that's one thing that I feel like it's like that's my approach to nutrition, was like I don't need that amount of protein. Like I need a certain amount of protein. Like it might vary. Like obviously, if you're like cutting or you're bulking or whatever, like you obviously, I feel like you need more protein when you're cutting than you are bulking, because you need to be able to preserve that muscle. And like, but like in terms of bulking, like at the end of the day, like you need to be able to like going back to the meal strategies, like you want to your whole goal of nutrition is to optimize the workout. You know what I mean? So like whatever you need to do in order to optimize that workout, whether it's like have your protein around the workout, have more carbs, like, so I feel like that's the number one thing for me, was like, you know what, I'm going to set my protein, and then I'm going to figure out like where I work best. Do I work best with more carbs? Do I work best with more fat? Like, and then I feel like that's where a lot of people don't really figure out. They don't like, do they operate better? Do they feel better with more fats? I feel like a lot of people just get too caught up in protein, and they just slam protein and never like really prioritize anything else. And then then that whole controversy with like the micros, like people don't get enough fruits and veggies, and they just, so I think that like having a more balanced diet, like there's a lot of things that like they do, you know what I mean, that you need them in your diet. And like supplementing like greens, I don't even feel is like even beneficial. Like you need to get the vitamins and minerals from like spinach and kale and like green leafy vegetables. And like people are always like, well, you know what, that's going to increase my calories. And I'm like, well, you know what, so be it. You need to have those foods in there. Like if you're gonna put on weight, then you need to like adjust your calories. But you can't be using the excuse that like I can't eat greens because it's pushing me above my limit and I need protein. It's like, well, you need protein just as much as you need vegetables.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's one thing too. When I first started, like my first competition prep, I wasn't having nowhere near enough vegetables. Like I feel like I was so deficient in micronutrients. So I think that first prep I probably felt the worst because of that, right? And with those leafy greens and those vegetables, they're going to be more satiating as well. They're going to have more fiber content. Another reason why I would recommend having a slightly higher protein while you're dieting is because it's more satiating, right? It's the most satiating macronutrient out there. So I can see that from a dieting standpoint. But yeah, definitely not going overboard. Like I've seen people who are weighing like 180 pounds trying to eat like 275, like 300 grams of protein. I'm like, man, like you're getting like no carbohydrates now. Like your workouts are probably going to be garbage because you're not getting the appropriate energy that you need.
Or they are, and they're just overeating, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
like they're eating more carbs because like they feel like they're like you eat more protein, then you feel like you're neglecting carbs, so you feel like your diet's not working. So because you're craving carbs, right? You're craving sugars, and then you end up like eating that amount of protein, but then also eating more carbs. So like you're just putting on weight. You know what I mean? And instead, it's just a recipe for disaster. I found that personally for me, like veggies was always a struggle. What I do is I just do like a shake. As disgusting as it sounds, I my girlfriend makes fun of me because I call it the ultimate health smoothie, and and every time I make it, she's like, "Are you making your ultimate health smoothie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am," because like I'm not going to eat these vegetables. I basically just put like kale and spinach. I recently switched over to fish oil, like not the capsules, like the actual oil.
Oh, yeah.
I just found that like I never remember to take the fish oil pill. And I just found that the oil, like I can just put it in with my smoothie, and like I just have like, so I have like kale and spinach and almond milk, banana, pineapple. Like I just try to put fruits and vegetables, anything I'm not going to eat, basically in there, and then that it is what it is, right? Like it just that works for me. It's calories, but there are calories that like I wouldn't eat, and that I'm probably going to benefit from. Like I would never eat. Like I've tried broccoli. Like I said, I can't do beans. So I can't really eat veggies. Like I just have a hard time doing it. And I can do it, but I can't do it consistently.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that shake for me is just like the savior for getting those greens in. And it's easy, just like, and it's filling. Like when I'm done drinking it, I'm full because it's a lot of volume. Like
Exactly.
yeah, so it fills my stomach, and I feel way better after drinking it. I'm just like, I got everything I need. Now I don't have to worry about like a little bit of spinach here, a little bit of spinach there. And like, I can just move on with my day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one more thing before we wrap it up, or a couple more things, two or three more questions before we wrap
Okay.
it up. So with social media, I just want to touch on this because I feel like this is important. So in terms of your consistency with social media, how do you balance that? Like when you're thinking of your social media content and you're promoting your stuff and you're posting your stuff, like what kind of thought goes into that? Do you batch your content? Do you write it before? Do you actually like do it based on like clients that are maybe like having issues with certain things? Like where do you get your social media content come from? And like how do you make the time to put out that content?
Yeah, so I'll start with where I get it from. So, essentially, yeah, like I was talking about before, just making sure that I'm putting out like some sort of value, having some sort of connection post, so, and also having some sort of testimonial posts. With that, to plan it out, so every morning I get up at 5 in the morning, do like a morning routine. So I do a little bit of meditation. I do write down like what I'm grateful for. I listen to like podcasts for about half an hour, typically on like on training or nutrition. A lot of times I'll even like those podcasts that I'm listening to will spark an idea of what to write. And then I'll write my Instagram post that same day in the morning at 6 a.m. So kind of just get up, do the morning routine, and then I write my post. And then I post 3 to 4 times per week with that. And then with my live, so it's pretty much with the content, like the value stuff, it's a lot of the questions I get asked by my clients or what they're confused about. I'll kind of post value posts based on that. A lot of connection posts, I'll just kind of go into areas that I've personally struggled with in the past and see if other people relate to those scenarios. And typically the people that relate to them will comment or message me and be like, oh, I've had the same thing happen to me, right? So, and then testimonials, obviously, yeah, putting that content out there, describing what this client went through, how I was able to help them out, yeah. What else did you have? Yeah.
I just want to touch on the 6 o'clock in the morning thing. I guess coming from somebody who like, I guess you make your own hours, eh? Like you kind of have an idea of like what you want to do and what you want to achieve that day. I guess like what motivates you to get up that early? Is it more of just something that you want to do for yourself where it's like, you know what, I've got things I got to do. I'm not going to have to get up that early, but like I want to get up that early. So like for you, like why is it important for you to get up that early when you're basically like the king of your schedule, I guess you'd say?
So for me, I find that's when I'm the most productive, and I found in the past, like when COVID originally hit, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be so productive. I'm gonna get so much stuff done. I started sleeping in because before that I was getting up at like 5:35 or 6 o'clock in the morning for my other job, and then it started slowly tapering to like 7 a.m. then to 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then I started getting lazier and lazier. I found just waking up earlier kind of gets me kind of a little bit out of my comfort zone too. Like gets me, I don't know, like just kind of gets me in the zone. And then doing that morning routine, getting up when everybody's still sleeping, I find it's just nice and quiet. I don't have any distractions. I can get a bunch of work done in that morning, and I have a lot more time for the rest of the day to do other stuff. But for me, it's just like I want to be the best online coach I can possibly be. Like for me to get to this point, I was working nonstop for like a month straight, working anywhere between like 10 to 14-hour days to get where I am now. So it's just putting in that work. Like I know if I put in the work that I'm going to get there, and I've already made it happen. I already was able to quit my kinesiology job and go full-time online coach. I just want to have that same work ethic. Like I don't want to start slacking off now, because I know if I start slacking off now, I'll get more clients dropping off. And with social media too, I find just being on there like constantly, like giving value, because I feel like if I drop off there, it's gonna other people are gonna be unmotivated, be like, well, you're not doing what you said you're gonna do, so why should I do what you want me to do? Like I don't know, I just want to be help inspire
People
people to keep.
recognize that they see consistent posts at a certain time. They're like, wow, he's up early. So
Yeah.
so like people like will recognize that, like, and they're consistent about it. So it's like it shows that like you're talking, like you're walking the walk, like you're doing everything in your power to like to maintain that client. And I think that a lot of clients like might think that like, oh, you're prioritizing this and like you're all, you know what I mean? So it's like at the end of the day, it's like I think that's awesome that you can do that. Like something I'm trying to work on myself is just trying to like not get up at a reasonable hour, but just trying to like be more productive, I guess. And like having more time that like if something doesn't go like as planned, like it's hard to fit it in if you don't got time. And just allowing yourself to do like that meditation and like that routine that you have, like there'd be no way that someone would be able to do that if they didn't give themselves enough time for like during the day to do it. So I think that like having the self-awareness to know that like in order for you to be successful, in order for you to accomplish what you need to accomplish, there's sacrifices that you have to make. And even if you're like setting your own hours, let's say you were like, oh, I choose to work a 9 to 5, you know what I mean? Like I think that like being able to like expand that and know that like you've got bigger goals, you've got like, you don't want to just be a 9 to 5, you want to be like cater to everybody. Like you want to be like you said, the best coach that you can be. In order to do that, like you got to be able to put in the work. You got to know like when, like being the most productive. Like for me, it's definitely not the morning. I would say it's the evening for me. So like, but like just understanding like those things and taking advantage of it and understanding that like I need to get up at this hour, because if I don't, then my day is going to suffer, my productivity is going to suffer, and then not only will that suffer, but like clients will suffer, and then everything will just kind of spiral, right? So.
And I find the main thing is structuring out your day too, because I know a lot of people when they stop doing like their full-time job, they feel like they have so much free time and they procrastinate a lot, and like they start streaming through social media a lot and just getting distracted all the time. Like I get bad for that every once in a while too, where I'll get a message on like Instagram and then I'm on there for like 30 minutes. I'm like, oh, should I just wasted 30 minutes? So just having set time to do certain things, set alarms on your phone, just having a structure for your day, having like a checklist to do.
I'm a firm,
checklist for that.
yeah, I'm a firm believer in a checklist. I feel like it's like people that don't do it, I don't understand. Like my girlfriend doesn't, well, I can't say my girlfriend doesn't really do it, but I'm just way more proactive with it. I'm not saying that she doesn't get nothing. She just knows what she needs to do. But for me to like have it written down and like putting like the pettiest stuff in there, like freeze cottage cheese or freeze the bananas or like things where I'm like making mental notes as I go throughout the day, where it's like, well, the bananas are going to go bad tomorrow. Like I just have like an ongoing to-do list of like things where I keep in my phone where I'm like, okay, this needs to get done. Like I didn't finish this, like, or it's like I'm a big believer in that as well. I think that's like the number one thing that I changed like right off the bat. What was the easiest thing to change was just like documenting my day, and just figuring out like, you know what, like what do I realistically can do today, and like if I got up late, like I can't achieve what I want to achieve. So like maybe tomorrow let's try to get up a little earlier, or like like I can't expect to get everything done if like, you know what I mean? If things are taking me longer and I'm not like giving myself, like, I can't say I'm really great with my time. Like sometimes I'm like, I think it's going to take, like, for example, video editing. Like if I'm editing like this podcast, like when I release this podcast, I'm probably going to like budget like 2 hours probably to like edit it, but it's going to take me way longer. But for some reason, like I never adjust it. So things like video editing and thumbnails and just like working on anything that I'm really working on, I'm just like really bad at budgeting my time. And then because of that, like I was studying for the course today, for example, and I was like, all right, I'm going to study this morning. I'm going to finish this chapter. And then I was like, all right, probably taking about 2 hours, 4 hours later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 4.5 hours later, I was like, I still wasn't done. I still had an assignment, and I was like, it threw off my whole day because like I didn't properly like budget my time, and then I just was way too tired to do anything else. So I just relaxed, and then I'm doing the podcast with you. But like for me, it was like that whole. If I would have budgeted my time better and had a better like idea of what I can accomplish and how long things are going to take me, whether or not it be getting up earlier or just learning myself a little bit better, I feel like it's just. That's the king of like making your own hours and being your boss. Like a lot of people think that it's easy. I wouldn't say a lot of people, but I think a lot of people do think it's easier than it is. Like if someone was like, oh, I'm gonna quit my 9 to 5 and do full time myself, it's like that'll be a piece of cake. Like I'll just do this and that, but like it's way harder. It's so much. There's so much more temptations, like sleeping in, going out. Oh, I'll just finish that later, and then later comes and you're tired, and it's things just don't get done as much as you wish they would.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I personally find it is more difficult doing this than doing my other job. Like the other job is you're here from this day, this time to this time with having more freedom. Like, yeah, you can schedule out your day. I do feel like I'm working a lot more than I previously was, but I do love the work that I'm doing now. And I know like over time, as I build better and better structures and scale my business, I'm going to have a bit more free time. But I know right now what I have to do to be successful is to keep grinding, keep producing content, keep just keep up with everything, right? And I find too, like just setting up a time to just like meditate or go on walks or just take a break, because sometimes I will schedule out my day and I'll have like everything scheduled out for like 10 hours in a row with like no breaks in there, and I'm like, man, okay, I can't do this. Like I gotta actually like schedule some breaks in there, go do something else. And just knowing what you can handle, like what your work capacity is, right? So
the worst is when you start skipping workouts. You know what I mean? Because you have so much work to do. That's when like I feel like that's the issue that I started running into, was like, well, I need to get this done, or I'll just work out tomorrow. You know what I mean? And it's just like you keep pushing the things like that made you successful to begin with, which is like why you're doing it. It's like you're not just doing it because you're trying to help clients, you're doing it for yourself as well. Like obviously your clients are important. I'm not saying they're not, but like the whole reason why you got into it was because you loved it for yourself. Right. It was something you enjoyed to do. So like why take away the enjoyment of actually like getting your workout in and having other people suffer? So like if you have to get up earlier to get your workout in, like I found that like I was always sacrificing myself, and maybe it was laziness or whatever, but like I always thought there was just way too much to do and I couldn't possibly do it if I didn't. Like, and I was like, how the hell am I going to get a workout in today? And it's just poor time management. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just like making a time for yourself, and like you said, like scheduling breaks and like scheduling walks and like actually scheduling your meals. Like there's been times where like I would sit down, I wouldn't sit up for like 6 hours, and I didn't even eat, and then and my protein was 0, and I'd be starting at like in the afternoon, and it's just like I'm eating all night. But yeah, just like little things like that. So I just want to end on one more topic, and this kind of what you mentioned is the motivational spot. So I guess like this is a good one to close it out on, is I guess like everybody struggles with motivation. And I think that like in terms of like COVID and just maybe whatever people are dealing with, I guess like in days that you maybe don't want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, the days that you don't want to help your clients, there's days that maybe that you don't want to actually train, or you just feel like maybe you can't achieve your pro card or whatever, like whatever kind of negativity goes through your head. What kind of things help you, kind of positive reinforcements help you with motivation to get your butt to the gym, to, you know, finish that client program, to kind of not only get that client program done, but try to find new clients, try to help more people? Like what kind of gets you like motivated to do all that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, man. And I think it's just that discipline, just thinking about long term rather than short term, right? Think about those long term goals of yeah, like you're gonna have times where you just feel like shit and you just don't want to do it, but those are the times that are gonna really you're gonna see if you're a successful person. Because if you constantly at those times are just like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it this day, and then you're gonna have more days where you're gonna be unmotivated. And I find too when you're unmotivated. Like I've had times where like, man, I just don't want to post. I don't want to go live tonight. But I'm like, I just got to do it. Like, because if I don't show up, people aren't going to show up from themselves. Like I want to make sure that I can like inspire people to do things even if they don't want to. And it's just, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So like, it could be that one time that you didn't want to show up, that you do show up, that you really get a new client, and then that client ends up being a client for 3 years. You end up helping them like achieve their goal. Maybe they get their pro card. Like if you didn't go live that one time, like I think that people like think about like they give up short-term things because they don't like short-term. I don't know how to. There's a saying I'm trying to get, but I can't really think of the saying. But it's like to make sacrificing the short term for the long term is kind of what I'm trying to hit on. It's like so many people are so focused on the long term, but they neglect the short term. Like if you're really trying to get to where you need to be, so many people blow off all the things you need to do in order to get there, and all they think about is, well, I want to get my pro card. But like, what are you going to do to get your pro card? Are you going to like be demotivated? Is quarantine going to stop you? Are you going to buy gym equipment? Are you going to do push-ups in your basement? Like what kind of things are you going to do that people aren't going to do? That like, I guess like what level do you hold yourself to, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like, do you want to be that person that says, you know what, working out is awesome, this is what I do for a living, but then you end up skipping workouts yourself. So I guess like at the end of the day, it's like not everybody's perfect, but like you have to be able to like hold yourself accountable, and you have to be able to like know when you're actually burnt out or like when you're demotivated. And I think there's a huge difference. Is like, are you actually burnt out, or is it something where you're just being lazy and you don't want to do? And I think that like there's never been a decision. I bet you like for you going live, there's probably times every time you did it, you probably never regretted it, right? There's probably something at the end you're like, you know what? I'm so glad that I did that. Like it's something that was like more rewarding, right?
Yeah. And usually those times where you're super unmotivated, once you just start doing a couple little things, you kind of get into that groove again and get into that momentum, and then you feel so much better. Like a lot of times people like, especially for workouts, they're just like, oh, they're not feeling it, but then maybe they start doing the warm up and they're like, okay, this is actually not too bad. Once they kind of start getting that momentum going,
Yeah.
then they're good. I found even in the morning, sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, I'm like, man, I just don't feel like doing anything. So I just start with something super, super simple, even something as small as just like making your bed, brushing your teeth, just doing something productive. I find that just kind of gets you into that groove of like being productive.
Yeah, for me it was like going to the gym in the winter sucks. Like I'm in Truro, so like we get it's just shitty weather like all the time. Like going to the gym, it's like you're freezing, like you're wearing a sweater, and like so I found like for me the biggest change that I made was actually doing like a better warm up, because there'd be days where I go to the gym and I don't feel like doing anything, but once I started going on the elliptical, which is a weird like I guess a weird machine to talk about, but like I just instead of the treadmill I go on the elliptical, and I find that like it gets way warmer, it gets me like it just I don't know just. There's days where I go to the gym and I'm surprised how much that warm up does and how much that elliptical does. And then like my blood's flowing and I'm warmed up, I'm feeling better. Like, then I'm like, you know what? Now I'm ready to crush a workout. And I don't even like set a time. I'm not like, I'm going to warm up for 5 minutes. I'll warm up for 15 minutes. If I might do my cardio before my workout, like depending on how I feel. I just find that like there's days where I go to the gym, as soon as I get into that cardio or as soon as I get into that routine of like warming up, I instantly, I'm like, oh, why did I even think of not going? You know what I mean? Like, I'm so glad that I'm here. And then after the workout, I'm like, you know what? That's just sets the tone for the day. It's like, all right, now I'm going to get my meal in. Now I'm going to make sure I get to bed at a good time, because I'm going to do it all again tomorrow. So I think that like just, you know, like not. I think I think the biggest thing with that is just taking your feelings out of it. Like, don't even think about how you feel. Just do it. Like, just grab your gym bag, go in the car, start your car, and drive to the gym, and sit in the parking lot if you have to. There's been times where like I just went to the gym and I didn't even say anything. I just left, went to the gym, sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, and went into the gym. But like that whole time I'm sitting there trying like blasting the tunes, like trying to find something to be like, all right, let's crush this workout. I think that like taking your feelings out of it, and like I think a lot of people feel bad for themselves. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I worked a long day and I don't have time to eat, and oh, I don't want to go. Like at the end of the day, everybody is like faced with obstacles. Everyone has something that they need to get like over, but like it's your ability to make sacrifices for something that you really want. And if you really want it, then you just have to do it.
100%. Yeah. It's all about those priorities, right? So, yeah.
So is there one last thing that you want to say before we conclude the podcast?
Man, yeah, thanks for having me on there here. Like this is awesome, man. I'm hoping to come on here more often.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. But other than that, no, I think that's we covered a lot of awesome information. Like, there's so much more that we can cover too. So I'm excited to come back on here, man.
Absolutely. I always try to get my guests back. Like I've had a couple people that I've had on like multiple times. And I just think that like I always try to jam pack the outlines. It's definitely a problem of mine, just like trying to throw everything in there. It goes back to like once I start one thing, I'm like, oh, I want to get his opinion on this. I want to get his opinion on that. I want to talk about this. But it's like maybe I should just do 2 separate podcasts where it's like, but always doing that first one, it's always like, well, you never met me, you don't know who I am. Like, let's just do a podcast and then see how it goes, kind of thing. And then like maybe we could do but like for me, it's like, all right, let's just try to get as much as I can into one podcast. Like
might just have to split it up.
Yeah, it's 2 hours long. I guess the good thing is that if people are into it, they're going to watch 2 hours, and then and then that gets my watch time up, right? So it's like, sweet. Like, if you can stick around for the 2 hours, then like we must have talked about some good shit.
Exactly, man. Sweet, man. But
yeah, no, definitely. Like for the future, like I'm always interested in getting people back on. So if like if you want to reach out to me, or I can reach out to you in the future for sure. Like maybe after your show. When's your show in May?
So I got one in May, and then I'll have one in June 22nd or 26th. So maybe after that show, and then we can just catch up about competing, and then man, that sounds good.
Let's touch base in May, and let's go, and we can definitely book another one and go from there, and we can chat about competing, and we can chat again. So. But yeah, I do appreciate that. And as I always end every podcast is don't forget to be inspiring, stay motivated, and continue to push your limits.